Chapter 64. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go? Speak. Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. I kneel. Apologies to all the readers at the beginning of the month. I just discovered that the two characters, Fong Yueyin and He Wei, had a conflict with the settings of the versions. I didn't check them out when I posted the drafts. When I wrote later, I followed the impression of a certain version, resulting in many mistakes. I've already revised the contents of Chapter 19, Part 1, and the title and contents of Chapter 35. This character has been renamed to He Yueyin. She is the Captain He who appeared in the first volume. Please forgive me, readers. Readers who use the Crosscut app, if you wish to obtain a better reading experience, please erase all data from the app and download again. Lose weight and count. No, this atmosphere isn't right. Luo Nen always had a clear understanding of his own position. Even if he jumped out of the circle of normal society and entered the special domain of the Wilderness Explorers Society, he was still a hard-working employee. He still hadn't familiarized himself with the working environment up until now. Naturally, he hadn't found a suitable position. But now you're telling me that he even has a secretary? Luo Nan stared at Zhang Yingyi. Without a doubt, this innocent-looking woman certainly knew the cause and effect. Zhang Yingying's face was as white as a lotus flower. Did your secretary say how to arrange things? Luo Nan curled his lips. How did you guys arrange things before? You just invited me to walk in the elevator? Now that the evaluation is over, can I go home? Don't. The entrance evaluation is over, but there are other advanced evaluations. The society has already booked a room on the 81st floor. He will entertain you well. You just need to bury your head in there and draw. Draw! Luo Nan's train of thought gradually straightened out. He stared coldly at her. You guys want to evaluate my psychic abilities? This is different from what you said. Zhang Yingying had an innocent expression. Yeah, I told you before. It's best not to expose the fact that you have psychic abilities. You should first familiarize yourself with the situation in the society. It won't be too late to take it out when your abilities truly awaken. Otherwise, many people will come to bother you. You won't be able to refuse them, and you might offend someone. Word for word, right? Luo Nan continued to stare at her. Zhang Yingying spread her hands. The problem is that my words aren't worth a fart. Now that the boss had spoken, the situation had changed. What else could I do? I was going to explain it to you when we get there, but since you can already see the interface and control it with your mind, please switch to the homepage announcement area. The translucent interface on Luo Nan's retina underwent a change following Zhang Yingying's guidance. As far as the eye could see, the rust-colored soil and the wave-like cracks continued to extend endlessly into the depths. You should have already seen the main interface. It's the wilderness, right? There's a notice board by the side of the road. It's there. What kind of third-rate game interface is this? Luo Nan cursed silently as he read the information. In less than half a second, words like darksider species, human-faced arachnid, virus, and so on swarmed in. They interweaved to form a blurry and gloomy screen of darkness before his eyes. Fine cold sweat seeped out from Luo Nan's spine with a whoosh. See, do I still need to say more? Right now, it was a war against the Darksider race and its infected. The government, the military, the society, and Quantum Corporation are sparing no expense to launch a search and annihilation operation in the entire city. This epidemic must be completely contained before it spreads on a large scale. Zhang Yingying's finger tapped on Luo Nan's chest, one tap after another. Her face was devoid of a rare smile. My attitude is very serious. The society's attitude is also very serious. Every ability user, no matter if they're veterans or rookies, must contribute their strength when it comes to matters related to our safety. Moreover, Mr. Luo, who has just joined the society, you are a psychic. For the current society, you are what we need the most precious resource. Luo Nan muttered, the most precious resource? Of course. Do you know how many psychics the society has right now? Even a branch like Xia City, which has over 1,000 people, only has 4. One of them is currently exploring the wilderness and won't be able to rush back in a short amount of time. As for the remaining 3, Old Master Yu is nearly 100 years old. It would be inhumane to have him run around day and night. He can only sit in the central command. Then East City and West City are divided. Old Gao and Old Bai are working hard right now. And then you discovered a new coolie. Luo Nan sneered in order to conceal the nervousness in his heart. In a certain sense, he could be considered a virus-infected person. It was just that the Darksider seed that had invaded his body had been subdued by the dark chains formed by the format's power. But the problem was that this kind of subduing didn't eliminate the roots. The burning wraith had transformed into the wraith sign, but it still retained its instincts. It was still able to devour its own kind to strengthen itself. Only the heavens knew whether or not his current state could be considered an infected person in the eyes of a group of ability users. Whether or not he was still a target to be strangled. But Luo Nen also had a sort of indescribable excitement amidst his nervousness. The human-faced arachnid. This sort of peculiar existence expanded the depth and breadth of his understanding of the burning wraith in an instant. It allowed him to overlook the ins and outs of this matter from a higher level. It allowed him to overlook the cause and effect of this matter. Moreover, he had a completely new concept of what he could do in the future. This was a large net laid down by the human-faced arachnid. He was originally a node in this net, but now it had already mutated. From the society's judgment, any other node that carried out the net operation would probably restore the human-faced arachnid to its peak. The human-faced arachnid's treacherous and bewitching nature would be displayed to the fullest. But looking at how his format was suppressing the wraith sign, wouldn't he be able to completely grasp the terrifying power of the human-faced arachnid in the end if he were to start from this point? Wasn't this the extraordinary power he had always been pursuing? It was also a power grasped by the power of his format. Perhaps this was where the mysteries of his grandfather's research lay? Hey, what are you thinking about? You're not scared stupid, are you? Luo Nen came back to his senses in a daze. He didn't immediately respond. Zhang Yingying patted his shoulder. Don't be scared. It's normal to be scared. But it's already very gratifying that you didn't cry for your mother. Relax. We just want to borrow your marvelous draw ability. And we'll absolutely protect you. Look, you have me now. Then the society arranged a full-time secretary for you. It's a Yueyin, right? She's a monster who entered the society with a C+ score. A genius. Her true strength can only be higher and not lower. Luo Nan concealed a smile. Don't they say that only psychics are useful when facing the Darksider species? What are you thinking about? Any qualified awakened has a method to lock onto the Darksider species in a true battle. It's just that each method is different. Many people can even see it with their naked eyes. Zhang Yingying solemnly corrected Luo Nan's preposterous and laughable train of thought. The true problem is that when the Darksider species is in a hidden state, only psychics can discover the clues. The society is relying on your ability in this aspect. Who would send you to the front lines? Oh really? Luo Nan became even more nervous. It seemed that his situation was more similar to that of an awakened. It was also an intuition. At most, he could rely on the wraith sign to sense it at close range. As for psychics, when he fooled Zhang Yingying, all he did was draw what he saw. In addition, Li Xueqing had a bit of a psychic's intent. But the premise was that the burning wraith on Li Xueqing's body had already taken form. They could sense each other. This kind of situation was seriously different from the long-range senses of a psychic. What to do? Luo Nan wanted to pick up his notebook right now. He wanted to make some gestures to avoid making a fool of himself on stage. In fact, he really did take out his notebook. He opened the flexible e-ink screen and drawing software. Chapter 65. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Zhang Yingying burst out laughing when she saw this. Sharpening a spear at the last minute? Even if it's not fast, it's still good. Do you really think this is an exam? Luo Nen didn't even raise his head. Someone said that I'm a psychic, but I've never admitted it. Now that it seems like it's not bad, I'll draw a picture to get a feel for it. If it really is. You mentioned, what if, to me. Zhang Yingying saw that Luo Nan wasn't sharpening his spear at the last minute. Instead, he was running away at the last minute. Her almond eyes immediately widened and she grabbed him by the collar. You're able to draw my white rainbow and that bizarre prison building sketch. How could you not be a psychic? Sure, I'm a shaman. Luo Nan continued to place his gaze on the drawing software. He wanted to draw something, but his mind was in chaos. He had no idea what to draw at all. At this time, Zhang Yingying was still talking noisily in his ear, so he decided to just throw in the towel. You were the one who introduced the concept of shamans to me. I'll also take the association's offer. Anyways, in the end, it'll be you, Sister Yingying, paying the bill, right? Luo Nan had never used such an intimate form of address before. It made Zhang Yingying fall back in disgust. Kids with reverse psychology were not easy to deal with. Zhang Yingying's eyeballs swiveled. Her hand that was gripping Luo Nan's collar loosened a bit. It's just hiring a C++ secretary and bodyguard. I can afford it for one night at most. On the other hand, if you want to enjoy this kind of treatment for a long time, then you'll have to put in a bit of effort. All right, you seem to have said that you needed inspiration or something. Do you want to find a bit of excitement? Acumen College's large living area has a very high level of service. In this mutually shameless competition, Luo Nan was defeated by Zhang Yingying's abundant experience in the end. He pursed his lips and said nothing. Distractedly, he drew meaningless lines on his graphic software. At the end of the day, he still cared a lot about the professional association's courtesy. This was a high starting point that he had never imagined before, and it was also a great opportunity that fell from the sky. He didn't want to let this opportunity slip through his fingers, so he had to do something. Luo Nan tried to recall this morning's practice that was most similar to a psychic's methods. But that dreamlike feeling was really too mysterious, and with his current restless state, it was really difficult for him to completely recreate it. Zhang Yingying tilted her head and looked at the messy lines on the flexible screen. The more she looked, the more suspicious she became. Hey, if you want to make fun of yourself, don't drag me into it. Luo Nan was disinclined to pay attention to her. Someone walked past them at this time, and the person felt a bit familiar. Raising his head, he saw that it was Shui Lei and Chen Xiaolin. Both of them had ugly expressions on their faces. Clearly, the previous conversation had not been resolved. The atmosphere between the two of them was extremely tense. At this time, they were walking in the direction of the elevator, not knowing what they were going to do. Under such circumstances, it was obviously not appropriate to greet them. Luo Nan could only pretend that he didn't see anything. He lowered his head and smeared 2 more times, but he inexplicably drew out the abstract lines of the wraith sign. Moreover, it was done in one go. It had never been so efficient before. Luo Nan only came back to his senses when the symbol took form. His heart palpitated slightly. He was worried that Zhang Yingying would see some clues, so he raised his head to glance at her. He saw that this woman had long since been dazzled by his chaotic lines. She was a bit foolish for once. You feel something? Luo Nan was just about to respond with a sentence when he suddenly went mute. Suddenly drawing the wraith sign had some ominous implications. In the next moment he completely followed his instincts and turned his head. Shui Lei and Chen Xiaolin had already gotten into the elevator. The lights in the elevator shone down, but they were unable to illuminate the gloomy faces of the two. He felt that a dispute could erupt between the two at any time. And at this time, a bizarre thought flashed through Luo Nan's mind. It was the information he had just looked up this morning. It came from the Secret Star forums. It was a suspected mental illness, a human tragedy triggered. The wife killed the husband, and before this, the husband and wife experienced a nightmare at the same time. Alert! 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 The bold-faced words of the Secret Star forums appeared in his mind. Luo Nan closed his notebook with a bang. He turned around and headed toward the elevator, shouting loudly at the same time, Shui Lei. This loud shout was absolutely impulsive. Even Luo Nan found it a bit hard to continue after the shout left his mouth. He didn't know how to explain himself. But right at this moment, A trembling sound rang out on the mental plane. The heavily chained crow hummed. And most importantly, the wraith sign at the very front of the chain lit up with a dark red glow. Luo Nan's mind throbbed, but what immediately floated up in his mind was that he didn't know what to do. This was because the wraith sign senses clearly came from two completely opposite directions. One was directly in front, and the other was directly behind. Luo Nan could clearly see what was happening directly in front of him. Right when Xue Lei was staring at him in a daze, a ghost-like burning wraith appeared. Half of the wraith's body had sunk into Xue Lei's shoulder. It was unknown whether it was being pulled out or whether it was continuing to seep in. Reality and illusion interweaved. The strange scene of a human body and a wraith merging together made one's scalp go numb. And directly behind him, careful! Zhang Yingying's screech and the sharp whistling sound of tearing air rang out at the same time. The elevator door was already closing at this time. Luo Nan could clearly see a warped figure sticking to his body on the smooth metal door. The figure's shoulder exploded with blood. The blood sprayed out and landed on the side of Luo Nan's neck. And at the same time, Luo Nan's back violently shook. It was as if someone was pushing against him, causing him to fall forward. But the force was too great. In the end, Luo Nan's feet didn't touch the ground at all. He soared into the air and collided with the elevator door that had yet to close. The elevator door approached at high speed, and the gap between the doors slowly shrank. Luo Nan could roughly understand that he was probably being used as a tool to block the door. Then the elevator door opened to the two sides at this time. A figure staggered and fell to the side, smashing into a corner of the elevator. It was Qin Xiaolin. As for Xue Lei, this big fellow who was being cut by half of the wraith was blocking the door. His simple and honest face even carried a bit of childishness. He was like an angry Vajra, and his thick palm chopped down at Luo Nan's face. Perhaps it was because of the haste, but Luo Nan didn't even have the time to stir up his negative emotions. Right now Luo Nan was actually quite calm. In the blink of an eye, Xue Lei's palm cut past Luo Nan's ear. He grabbed Luo Nan's shoulder and pushed down lightly. Luo Nan instantly broke free from his suspended state. He involuntarily tumbled and fell into the corner of the elevator, in the same direction as Qin Xiaolin. Luo Nan's field of view spun as he tumbled, but the heavily chained crow drove the wraith sign. The entire surrounding environment of the elevator was mapped into his brain. At the same time, an angry roar rang out beside his ear. Xue Lei had already collided with the shadow that had pounced into the elevator. It looked like Xue Lei wanted to knock the person out of the elevator. But the opponent's momentum was far too strong. Xue Lei's majestic body was actually completely unable to resist. His entire body fell backwards, smashing heavily into the back of the elevator. From Luo Nan's senses, it seemed as if the entire building was swaying. Chapter 66. Genius in 1 second. Remember love go away? Speak, Net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. The swing of the elevator was quite intense. Perhaps the violent vibrations had caused some kind of circuit failure, but the elevator doors didn't even close. The entire elevator suddenly sank down, sinking no less than half a floor. Zhang Yingying, who had rushed up from behind, was nearly crushed to death in the intertwining cracks of the elevator. Fortunately, she was able to make an emergency stop, narrowly avoiding disaster. But she looked at the sealed entrance and stamped her feet in anxiety. The elevator soon came to a stop. This sort of maglev elevator floated within the magnetic passageway. The moment the elevator's swing exceeded the safety line, it would automatically activate its mechanical lock and fix its position. This also meant that the elevator would become a sealed space for a short period of time. Luo Nan and Qin Xiaolin didn't have the ability to fight. Their fates would be decided by Xue Lei and his enemy, who were currently entangled together. Xue Lei's face flushed red. The man wearing a black suit in front of him was a size smaller than him, but the strength the man displayed was far above his own. Xue Lei's internal organs felt as if they had been flipped upside down after receiving a frontal attack. Even breathing was difficult for a few seconds. What was even more bizarre was that the other party clearly had a serious wound on his shoulder that tore through his flesh and bone. His face didn't have any distinctive features, but it was so apathetic that it made one's heart go cold. His exertion of strength wasn't affected at all. Right now, the two's arms were pressed against each other, and their legs were apart. Their entire bodies were entangled together. Shuelei was just about to use a wrestling method to seize back some of the initiative, but he saw his enemy open his mouth, revealing dense white teeth, and directly bite at Shuelei's throat. Shuelei grunted and relied on his height to smash down with his head. His forehead collided with the enemy's face, blocking this vicious beast-like bite. It was reasonable to say that Shuelei's choice was brave and correct. The position of his collision was also advantageous. But the other party was clearly bleeding from his nose and mouth, yet it was as if nothing had happened. Shuelei's head was dizzy, and in the end, it affected his body's exertion of strength. His feet floated slightly, and just as he was about to cry out in his heart, his whole body was lifted off the ground by the brute force of the other party. Then, the world spun around him, and he fell heavily on the metal floor with a hollow sound. This time, he almost threw up his heart and lungs. However, years of arduous training came into play. The instant Shuelei lost his balance, he almost instinctively twisted his legs, and in the end he still managed to trip the enemy. Taking advantage of this gap, Shuelei's majestic body contracted at an unbelievable degree, and then bounced up again. Just as the enemy was about to pounce on him, Shuelei took advantage of the momentum to deliver another headbutt. This time, it was from the bottom up, hitting the enemy's chest. After 2 consecutive tremors, Shuelei and the enemy were pushed back at the same time, hitting the metal inner wall behind them. What was worth rejoicing about was that Shuelei's grasp of direction was quite good. He pushed the enemies in the opposite direction from Luo Nan and Chen Xiaolin. He leaned slightly to the side and was able to protect the two who had no combat strength. He should be able to take a breather now, right? Shuelei's chest heaved up and down violently. He didn't know why, but he was in a terrible state today. His stamina consumption was especially severe. The previous round of dangerous hand-to-hand combat had almost completely emptied his stamina. Was it because he was too nervous? Shuelei couldn't figure out his own situation, and the enemy in front of him didn't immediately make a move. Instead, he used a strange and unfocused gaze to look over here. He was simply like a mental patient. Are you guys crazy? Chen Xiaolin, who was in the corner, was finally able to somewhat react after a series of unforeseen events. Everything that happened before her eyes had already completely exceeded the limits of her common sense. She knew that her boyfriend could fight very well, but she had never seen him fight to the death without saying a word. There was absolutely no reason at all. Luo Nan, whom she had just gotten to know today, had joined in as well. It looked like he was standing on their side. Or perhaps it was because of this fellow that the inexplicable murderer was drawn in. What she couldn't bear the most was the, as it should be, expressions on their faces. What the hell was going on? Chen Xiaolin struggled to stand up. She felt a sense of absurdity and dread that separated herself from the rational dimension. It made her instinctively want to flee this area, to flee from these people. But how could she do this in the completely sealed elevator? She could only shout at the top of her lungs, "Can't you guys stop and talk nicely? We're all trapped right now." "Shut up." Short shouts came from the mouths of 2 people at the same time. Shuelei and Luo Nan spoke in unison, shouting to stop Chen Xiaolin's irrational actions of not understanding the situation at all. After shouting, Shuelei locked onto the enemy in front of him with full concentration. Luo Nan spoke a few more words. "Senior sister, please calm your emotions, okay?" As he spoke, he turned his face to face Chen Xiaolin from all sides. Chen Xiaolin was stupefied for a moment. She was locked in place by Luo Nan's mottled and strange gaze. It was as if all the strength in her body had been sucked out in an instant. She leaned against the corner of the elevator, her mind a field of blankness. Luo Nan used hypnosis to temporarily control Chen Xiaolin. Then he raised his head to look at the upper part of the elevator. Shuelei's attention was on the formidable enemy before him, But Luo Nan's attention was on an even stranger level. The burning wraith that had struggled within Shui Lei's body in the previous fight had already drilled out from Shui Lei's body. It had seized a considerable amount of blood and energy. And at the same time, the burning wraith also leaped out from within the body of the fierce black-suited male. The two intertwined and fused together before Luo Nan could react, growing stronger in an instant. This sort of change really exceeded the scope of Luo Nan's reaction. Luo Nan also wanted to resolve this problem. The heavily chained crow had already been released and the wraith sign was glowing. But it didn't display the crushing superiority of the previous few times. It even displayed a bit of caution and conservatism. This was because the burning wraith that had just fused together in the elevator was the most powerful one Luo Nan had ever seen. Even the one Luo Nan had once controlled to turn the military transport ship upside down seemed to be somewhat inferior. The appearance of the burning wraith's body was even more similar to the appearance of the human-faced arachnid from the R&D district. Luo Nan saw the information from Quantum Corporation and confirmed a step further. The burning wraith's body was indeed like a hybrid between a human and a spider. To be more precise, it was a giant spider that was clinging onto the back of a human. Half of its body was fused into the human's body. The two shared the same head. It was ugly and demonic. The wraith floated in midair. Actually, it was still using a strange method to endlessly absorb the energy from Shui Lei and the black-suited male. Shui Lei's symptoms of being easily fatigued actually came from this. His opponent was actually more or less the same. Through the senses of the wraith sign, Luo Nan was able to estimate a few things on a deeper level. The current burning wraith had already devoured at least 10 or more of its own kind to display this sort of form. In other words, purely in terms of quantity, it was several times stronger than the wraith sign on Luo Nan's side. Luo Nan couldn't help but sigh at his own naivety as he thought about the hunting thoughts that had just existed. This was the rhythm of being devoured by the enemy. Chapter 67. A genius in 1 second remembers love go away? This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. Luo Nan stared fixedly at the burning wraith within the elevator. The latter's attention shifted over accordingly. This was a sort of eye-to-eye contact. 6 bewitching flames lit up on the head of the burning wraith. They were 2 parallel rows, truly resembling the eyes of a spider. The color of each eye was different. They were divided into 6 colors: dusky yellow, dark red, light gray, ghostly green, deathly white, and jet black. Each dot was extremely small, but the color of each dot swayed back and forth. It was bewitching and strange, making one dizzy. Luo Nan looked over and many muddy and chaotic thoughts arose from the bottom of his heart. His entire mood swelled with irritation. He wished he could smash something to vent his emotions. Fortunately, the heavily chained crow trembled as its vibrating sound swept over, suppressing these inexplicable emotions and distracting thoughts. The demonic eyes of the burning wraith flickered and changed, clearly noticing Luo Nan's heavily chained crow. Of course, there was also the wraith sign that flickered at the very front. In Luo Nan's eyes, its first action was to assume a pouncing posture. This was no different from the reaction of its kind in the school's medical department this morning. Luo Nan also assumed a defensive posture, preparing to give it a painful head-on attack. However, this burning wraith didn't actually pounce over. On the contrary, it even retreated a bit to increase the distance between it and Luo Nan. Its blurry face slightly tilted upwards and it let out a shriek that was hard for ordinary people to hear, but it surged on the mental plane. Luo Nan's heart jumped. He practically instantly thought of the fearful roar from yesterday on the warship. He didn't have time to think too much. The heavily chained crow hummed as it broke through the air, striking directly at the burning wraith. But the enormous wave of the mental attack came even faster. When the heavily chained crow touched the burning wraith, Chen Xiaolin behind him had already let out a shriek. Her emotions of fear burst forth, and her entire body crashed into the inner wall of the elevator. She wanted to find a way to escape, but she simply didn't have any opportunity to do so. Her entire body stiffened, and her eyes slightly bulged out from fear. A dark red bloody light soared from her body, shooting straight at the burning wraith. She instantly became dispirited and fainted as the bloody light broke out from her body. Luo Nan was truly unable to obstruct this sort of incorporeal and incorporeal method. He himself needed to rely on the suppression of the heavily chained crow in order to stabilize his mind and his surging blood and energy. And the chains that traversed through the air seemed to have been affected by the main body. They lost their previously all-conquering strength and stopped outside the burning wraith, trembling. At that moment, the effect of fear roar was far from over. In the elevator, the black-suited male, who was obviously under the control of the burning wraith, let out a short roar and once again pounced towards Shuelei. Shuelei was obviously affected by Qin Xiaolan's scream. His body trembled, causing him to lose the initiative. However, he did not show any signs of weakness. He mustered all his remaining strength, and with a low roar, he pushed forward. Both sides once again clashed head-on, and this time, Shuelei only took half a step back. He took a punch, and at the same time, he returned an elbow. For the time being, he did not seem to be at a disadvantage. But Luo Nan wasn't happy. This was because he could already see that the intense combat and the surging emotions were the best catalysts. It caused the blood and energy of the two to transform into a long line of bloody light, endlessly pouring into the burning wraith in the air. Such a method of drawing blood and sucking marrow was more than 10 times more tyrannical than the spore environment of the simmering over a small fire from before. The burning wraith's ability to interfere with reality had already exceeded his imagination. Luo Nan suspected that if he continued to suck like this incorporeal wraith, which only existed on the mental plane, would be able to completely materialize from incorporeal and appear on the material plane. And what made him most vigilant was the opponent's calm attitude. The burning wraith had actually controlled its devouring instincts. It did not directly pounce forward, but instead increased its own strength to the greatest limit to increase its chances of victory. This could already be called an intelligent judgment. Sure enough, the name given by Quantum Corporation, human-faced arachnid, was the most appropriate name for this monster that was endlessly approaching a complete body. This was a savage and cunning hunter. It used every method to weaken its prey and strengthen itself. It was really hard to imagine just what kind of power its complete body would have. Luo Nan knew that the situation was becoming more and more unfavorable. With the support of Shuelei and the black-suited male, the power that the human-faced arachnid was able to grasp was rising with the tide. Luo Nan's heavily chained crow continued to attempt to penetrate through the incorporeal body of the arachnid. The wraith sign at the front was also doing its utmost to devour all the energy it could reach. But there was always a faint layer between them. After a few penetrations and disturbances, the core of the human-faced arachnid remained majestically motionless. Moreover, it continued to strengthen endlessly. Right now, the human-faced arachnid's main focus was still on strengthening its body. Once the strengthening came to an end, Luo Nan really didn't know what kind of terrifying attack would come next. As for Luo Nan himself, it seemed that he had reached his limit. These sorts of chaotic thoughts merely flashed before they were completely dispelled. Actually, there was still one more move. Luo Nan no longer looked at the human-faced arachnid. Instead, he closed his eyes and forced himself to enter the fixed space. Thanks to these past 2 days of difficult tempering, Luo Nan's mental state had made considerable progress. The visualization diagram of the tetrahedron, the inscribed sphere, and the outer-scribed sphere appeared in the void in the blink of an eye. The heavily chained crow pulled out from the central region of the human-faced arachnid. It extended outward segment by segment in an attempt to penetrate deeper into the human-faced arachnid. But no matter what, it was separated by a layer. It was far from reaching the destructive might it had when it first subdued the burning wraith. Before, Luo Nan believed that it was because the human-faced arachnid was excessively powerful. But now he had other thoughts. Perhaps the problem lay with him. What state was he in when the heavily chained crow displayed its greatest power? There was only one answer, the out-of-body state. The feeling of being transparent and clear, which disregarded all material objects, had disappeared ever since he returned to the out-of-body state. Luo Nan didn't understand the reasoning behind it, but the threat was right in front of him. He didn't have the time to ponder over it. Even if he treated a dead horse as a living one, he still had to go. The out-of-body state was an unfamiliar experience for Luo Nan. At first, he was struck by the siege hammer of the burning wraith. Then he was pulled by the heavily chained crow, forcing him into an out-of-body state. Now he had to take the initiative and continue his train of thought from back then. He transmitted the relevant thoughts through the heavily chained crow to the wraith sign. A marvelous vibration was transmitted back, instantly washing over his entire body. This time, Luo Nan's senses were even clearer. He clearly touched upon an incorporeal membrane. Originally, he didn't have the strength to break it, but under the pull of an external force, the internal and external attacks intersected. A hole instantly split open in this membrane. He immediately lost his bindings and floated up. Luo Nan's eyes were still closed, but his senses on the mental plane were completely opened. And at this moment, he met the peerlessly bizarre gaze of the human-faced arachnid. In the state of a soul body, the rattling sound of the heavily chained crow's trembling seemed to be even more fine and clear. It was precisely this subtle change that made Luo Nan instantly understand that his judgment was correct. The previous barrier wasn't because of any other reason. The most important reason just happened to come from his fleshly body. He definitely had to carefully study this problem later. In front of him, the human-faced arachnid's 6 eyes flickered. It was a bit eager to make a move. Perhaps it felt that it had accumulated enough superiority? Or perhaps Luo Nan in the out-of-body state looked more delicious and easier to bully. Luo Nan abandoned his final stray thoughts and looked straight at the human-faced arachnid without fear. Let's try again? The battle was on the verge of breaking out, but in this instant, the elevator's safety skylight collapsed with a rumble. A human figure flew down and smashed right into the head of the black-suited male, who had just crossed the middle of the elevator. Chapter 68. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. By right, the black-suited man's reaction was considered fast. Even when he was fighting with Shuelei, he still managed to twist his body to dodge. The problem was that the elevator compartment was only so big. Shuelei had to use a small portion of the compartment in order to protect Luo Nan and Chen Xiaolin, who were behind him. The space left for the black clothes was very little. In the end, he still had to use his arms to block. With a bang, the metal plate smashed onto the shoulder of the black suit. The predicted huge force had completely disappeared. The light metal plate was directly deformed. He had exerted force at the last moment and had even used the wrong amount of force. No matter how fierce the black suit was, he could not help but fall into a state of paralysis. Seeing the opportunity, Shuelei threw a punch without caring about anything else. However, his vision blurred again. He seemed to see a figure behind the black-suited man. Then, there was the crisp sound of bones breaking. The black-suited man twisted his body and came crashing over. This time, Shuelei had misjudged the distance. He instinctively turned his fist into a palm, wanting to push the black-suited man away. However, he had suddenly cut in between him and the black-suited man by lowering his body. It just so happened that Shuelei's arm was pushed outwards, leaving him wide open. His opponent's palm went up and struck his chin, sending a tremor into his brain. Shuelei's body stiffened. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to control his body. Just as he was struggling, the side of his neck was struck by another chop. This time he could not hold on any longer. His eyes rolled back and he fainted. In the blink of an eye, both sides in the life and death combat had fallen. They had both lost consciousness, and the blood and chi channels that were channeled to the human-faced arachnid had been severed. Although it was crude, it was a good method to take drastic measures. Luo Nan's mind shook. He immediately knew that reinforcements had arrived. The human-faced arachnid was endlessly enraged. Its 6 monstrous eyes suddenly lit up as it peered at the newcomer. The ripples on the mental plane condensed to the point of materialization and came crashing down. It was none other than the siege hammer. Luo Nen cried out in his mind. He tried to use the heavily chained crow to interfere with the human-faced arachnid, but the chained crow did indeed display a state that was vastly different from when it was in the out-of-body state. The chained crow pierced deeper, seeming to be about to touch the core of the human-faced arachnid. However, it was hard for the chained crow to display its immediate effects. It was at this moment that the red light in the elevator box exploded. Luo Nan had the urge to squint his eyes. This was the reaction of a soul body. Because right in front of them, the newly arrived reinforcements seemed to be bursting with a layer of raging flames. The blazing flames illuminated the interior and exterior. The siege hammer aimed directly at the soul level extinguished more than half of the raging flames, but in the end, it still didn't completely break through. On the contrary, the flames rose again after a slight setback, even exploding with an even more violent momentum than before, completely annihilating the impact on the mental level. Then, the flames filled the entire elevator, and the momentum was unparalleled. Format of fire. Luo Nan's mind couldn't help but be shaken, but he soon discovered that something was wrong. His soul body was swept by the light of the flames, and the pain he felt yesterday when he left his body reappeared. It was as if he was being cut by a knife. However, the coldness that froze his soul completely transformed into a scorching heat. So it didn't differentiate between friend and foe. Luo Nan saw that the situation was far from good. All thoughts of fighting a great battle after leaving his body were wiped away. Though he did not directly return to his body, he took a step back and hid behind his main body. He relied on the aura of his main body to block this wave of unexpected disaster. At the same time, a light whistle rang out from the elevator. The ice-cold blade light streaked across the sky, forming a clear contrast with the raging flames within the elevator. Yet it also miraculously blended together. The raging flames controlled the cold blade, and the glaring trajectory branded itself onto Luo Nan's mental plane. It didn't disperse for a long time. Love go, small, sate, netku. This blade looked very familiar. The human-faced arachnid was already in discomfort from being burned by the format of fire, and it was even more wary when facing the blade light. It instinctively wanted to dodge. But at this time, the heavily chained crow finally displayed its use after a period of adaptation. The chains suddenly snapped straight, and the chained body that was already pointing straight at the core of the human-faced arachnid radiated a myriad of fine threads. Though it lacked a bit of irresistible momentum, no matter what the human-faced arachnid wanted to do right now, it was able to carry out some interference and suppression. It was enough for the human-faced arachnid to slow down by a bit. The blade light tore through the air and instantly tore a wound through the body of the human-faced arachnid's phantom. Everything it passed through turned into nothingness. The human-faced arachnid hissed once more, but this time it was a miserable shriek. Before the shriek had even finished, the demonic body that was about to condense into substance actually exploded with a rumble. It transformed into countless dim rays of light that penetrated through the elevator box and dispersed in all directions. There was still this move? Luo Nan was greatly surprised. He could feel that the human-faced arachnid hadn't received any fatal injuries. The only reason it had disintegrated was for the sake of fleeing for its life. Who would believe this sort of judgment without a certain amount of intelligence? The heavily chained crow withdrew. With the wraith sign at the front, he felt that the human-faced arachnid had instantly disintegrated into chaos. He felt that the wraith sign had torn off a piece and devoured it in an instant. Luo Nen didn't carefully experience it, but he didn't want to delay any longer. His soul body threw itself into his body, returning to his body, and he opened his eyes. From his angle, he just happened to see the swift and fierce blade light return. In the end, it seemed to shrink back into the sleeve. Only the heavens knew that with such a close-fitting cut, there was no space to hide the blade's edge. Luo Nen couldn't help but size up the figure in detail. This figure looked a bit familiar. This is... Luo Nan opened his mouth to speak, but a wave of dizziness suddenly assaulted him. His body leaned back, pressing against the inner wall of the elevator. The ice-cold metal surface was soon heated up by his body temperature. Sure enough, The out-of-body technique was a very dangerous move. The consumption was enormous. The soul body had to bear a portion of the attack, and the fleshly body had to bear the brunt of it in the end. Speaking of which, he hadn't even eaten dinner today. He was already very hungry. But right now, this feeling of being very, 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 very full. What was going on? Luo Nen slowly inhaled and exhaled in an attempt to alleviate the endlessly increasing feeling of bloating. But it was useless. The feeling of being stuffed came from the mental plane. It was like the wraith sign had taken a bite and forgot to measure how big its stomach was. It had been stuffed by the human-faced arachnid's gift. The piece torn from the body of the human-faced arachnid didn't just contain pure energy. It also contained an enormous amount of information. The heavily chained crow possessed a certain analytical ability, but it wasn't able to operate properly when faced with such an enormous amount of chaotic information. Clearly, this information exceeded the limits of Luo Nan's understanding. What to do? Oh, perhaps it's possible. Luo Nan's mind stirred, and the external neuron buried within the flexible e-ink screen reacted. It connected with the heavily chained crow in an instant. It was as if a floodgate had been opened. Luo Nan didn't care if this enormous amount of information was useful or not. He stuffed it all in. His thoughts were very simple. Both input and reverse output were input. The external neuron was able to control multiple system modules in the laboratory at the same time. It could suppress the enormous amount of information within the supercomputer. It shouldn't be a problem to deal with the excess information on the body of the human-faced arachnid. Reality proved that his judgment was correct. The external neuron really did consume as much information as it could, without any adverse reactions. The resolution of his mental senses was limited. Luo Nan didn't know how the external neuron operated in the end. He wanted to open the flexible screen and take a look. A hand reached out in front of him at this time. Chapter 69. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? This is the web that provides you with wonderful novels to read. The hand that was extended in front of him was slender and spotlessly white. The cold and hard contours of the joints revealed a different meaning. Luo Nan raised his head and a familiar face entered his eyes. It looked excessively cold and indifferent. It was hard to deal with. There was also the suit and trousers. There was a considerable contradiction with the memories of a dozen seconds ago where the blade light had crisscrossed. You are He Yueyin, your temporary secretary. I'm very sorry, Mr. Luo. I came late. Right, her surname was also He. Luo Nan finally confirmed. Wasn't this the white-collared woman he met in the hotel lobby before? She was the one who made Chen Wei-kan of the Mutual Assistance Society call her sister He. He had even been this person's doorman. But today, this sister He had become his secretary? There seemed to be quite a large difference between the rules of the world of normal people and the world of ability users. It seemed to be more advantageous to him. He Yuan's eyes drooped slightly at this time. Her temperament was a bit different from the cold and proud face in his memories. Only now did Luo Nan realize that this person's gaze was far too fierce. When she intentionally or unintentionally concealed this characteristic, the impression she left behind was a thin and quiet person. Of course, she was also extremely beautiful. It really was good to have a secretary like this. A tiny sprout of vanity sprouted in his mind, but it was immediately uprooted. Luo Nan didn't forget Zhang Yingying's introduction of the situation. This was probably the special period of the human-faced arachnid's rampage. This was the embodiment of the value of psychics. If he really took this for granted, he would probably be sent to the Wilderness Explorers Society's joke wall. He would be forever remembered. All sorts of thoughts flashed through his mind in an instant. He Yuan's hand was still placed in front of him. Luo Nan's mind spun a bit before he reacted. He reached out and clasped her hand. When he truly touched her hand, he felt that He Yuan's hand was indeed as cold and hard as it appeared. Many of her fingertips and joints were covered in calluses. In comparison, Luo Nan's own palm was like that of a young master who had never experienced the baptism of wind and frost. It was a bit too soft. He Yueyin exerted a bit of force and brought the half-leaning, half-falling Luo Nen up. She pulled her hand out, but she still supported him. It was as if she was afraid that Luo Nan would fall again. Actually, Luo Nan really wanted to tell her that he was just a bit hungry and a bit full. His body was fine. But when he thought about it again, he felt that this statement was no different from a lunatic. He changed the direction of his words and pointed at the unconscious Shuelei. Is he okay? This is my friend. He saved me just now. Luo Nan was really worried that He Yueyin would treat Shuelei as an enemy and dispose of him. She's just temporarily unconscious. She'll wake up when her qi and blood rush through the bottleneck. But the other lady is a bit more troublesome. She may need to be hospitalized for observation, and a psychiatrist will be arranged. Wait a moment. As He Yueyin finished speaking, she lightly pressed her ear. She should be communicating with someone through the hexa ear. Luo Nen didn't feel that he was being left out. He took this opportunity to continue sizing up and evaluating his secretary. He Yueyin's eyebrows were locked by habit when she conversed with others. It should be said that Luo Nan had never seen her truly smile and relax. It was as if she was dissatisfied with everything, including herself. Perhaps it was because of this, coupled with her illustrious background, that she always gave people a great sense of oppression. Luo Nen wasn't a stranger to this feeling. He was normally like this as well. The experiment of restoring his grandfather's notebook had already consumed nearly all of his energy. The abstruse theories and extremely high operating standards made him constantly doubt whether or not everything he did was perfect. Whether or not he met the requirements, the pressure was always there. Naturally, it was hard for him to be happy. It was just that Luo Nen didn't have an illustrious background, so he couldn't form external oppression and the like. He could only appear more introverted and gloomy. Such a powerful woman lived under pressure all the time. This world was much more difficult than he imagined. Luo Nan shook his head as he inexplicably felt a bit emotional. He didn't know why he suddenly felt a bit melancholic. A second later, he discovered that the ground beneath his feet seemed to still be shaking. The elevator had already returned to its calm state, so the shaking could only come from the outside. He subconsciously asked, "Another earthquake?" "It's just a pointless venting after a failed operation." He Yueyin actually responded. She then pressed the elevator's floor button and selected the 81st floor. The elevator trembled slightly before returning to normal. It slowly started to ascend. Luo Nan reminded, "Zhang Yingying is still on the 27th floor. She's already been called up." Luo Nan blinked his eyes. He was already unable to make sense of the society's arrangements and corresponding logic. Zhang Yingying, that unreliable woman, had said a few words that were filled with misleading information. And no matter how he looked at it, He Yueyin was much more serious than Zhang Yingying. "Can you tell me what's going on right now? I remember that I only came here to participate in the entrance assessment." He Yueyin raised her head to look at him. "Assessment?" Luo Nen felt no pressure selling Zhang Yingying. "I just submitted my application to join the society this morning. Then Zhang Yingying notified me to come here to participate in the assessment, and I've already passed. Then you guys told me that the dark side of life form called the human-faced arachnid is wreaking havoc right now. The society really needs psychics. They even gave me a secretary. There's nothing wrong with the above, right?" He Yueyin frowned in response. "You only learned about the human-faced arachnid when you arrived at the hotel? What's the specific content of the operation?" "Content?" Luo Nan was stupefied. Then he discovered that he seemed to have sold out Zhang Yingying in an instant. Sold out well. Luo Nen had a whole new understanding of Zhang Yingying's degree of unreliability in an instant. He Yueyin shook her head. "Even if I told you the content, it would be meaningless. It's a complete mess." Was she talking about the society? Right when Luo Nan was bewildered, He Yueyin sent him a message through the hexa ear. "Please enter the encrypted channel. Adjust to war chess mode." Luo Nen moved according to her words, and the translucent interface of his visual membrane opened up once more. At this time, he discovered that 7 or 8 blood-red warnings had appeared in the encrypted wartime communication channel. They all came from He Yueyin, and the time was right before and after the incident. And Zhang Yingying had also sent out several messages over the normal communication channel. However, Luo Nan had been completely engrossed in the human-faced arachnid at the time. He actually didn't notice it at all. He Yueyin gave him a reminder at this time. Mr. Luo should pay attention to the Hexaear's information as much as possible. Our future communications should be conducted through it to ensure accuracy and efficiency. But I think I got disconnected just now. He Yuein's eyebrows tightened a bit. It was my negligence. Mr. Luo may be able to realize the third level of communication, but in the end, you aren't an awakened. Once you enter a tense situation, it will be very hard to balance everything. I hope that Mr. Luo can take a certain amount of time to do emergency training to avoid a situation where your communications are disconnected. We can start tomorrow and plan out the time to proceed. Luo Nan didn't respond immediately because the structural diagram of the Limestone Water Village pub had already appeared on his retina. There was an eye-catching moving logo on it. Chapter 70. A Genius in 1 Second. Remember love? Speak, Net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. The Limestone Water Village Hotel was not a standalone building. Even though it was 454 meters tall and had 108 floors, it could only exist as a secondary building to the entire Cloud City Water Village complex. Moreover, it was the one with the lowest height. There were a total of 6 buildings similar to the Limestone Water Village Hotel. They were distributed in a ring shape, rising one after the other. They surrounded the 1179-meter-tall main building of Cloud City, forming what could be called a first-rate complex of buildings in the entire world. Luo Nan saw a structural map that included the entirety of the Limestone Water Village Hotel as well as a few passageways that led to the low-level business center. The meshed perspective map looked like a beehive, but it was 1,000 times more complex. The blue triangular flags representing the Wilderness Explorers Society were scattered within. It was as if they were rushing through a maze. Luo Nan blurted out when he saw this scene, "There are too few people." The 108-floor Limestone Water Village Hotel was the most affordable and friendly building within the Cloud City Water Village complex. Naturally, its popularity was high. It was the weekend, and it was the peak of the night. There were at least a dozen banquets lined up. Adding in the tourists and travelers, 20 to 30,000 people wasn't too much. However, there were no more than 15 aptitude users scattered on each floor. On average, one person had to take care of 7 or 8 floors. In reality, there were a few groups of people, including the 2 of them in the elevator right now. In terms of coverage, it was simply riddled with holes. Luo Nan had always heard about operations and whatnot. He thought that the society would be mobilizing in large numbers in order to hunt and kill the human-faced arachnid, laying down an inescapable net. But when he saw this scene, he felt a bit embarrassed. At this time, he remembered a small detail. "I remember you brought 4 people with you, Sister He?" Luo Nan was too embarrassed to call her secretary He, so he learned from Chen Weiken. "That's the one with the 4 of them together." Luo Nan was already completely convinced. Wasn't chasing after the human-faced arachnid like finding a needle in a haystack with this kind of configuration? He Yueyin suddenly asked him at this time, "Can we switch to conference mode?" Luo Nan believed that she had other plans, so he naturally had no reason to refuse. Soon, a notification flashed on his retina interface. The wartime encrypted communications had entered conference mode. A row of avatars appeared on the interface. All 15 members of the association in the Limestone Water Village pub were online. Zhang Yingying's squirrel was among them. But contrary to his expectations, He Yuein's following words were clearly a response to his question. The number of people isn't a crucial factor. After all, the hidden resources under the control of the society are quite considerable. Moreover, 3 to 5 awakened working together is more than enough to surround and kill a human-faced arachnid clone if the allocation is proper. He Yueyin naturally had the qualifications to speak these words as the powerful person who had directly repelled the human-faced arachnid. Luo Nan didn't have any objections, but he didn't say it in the private channel. He would only say it in public. Sister He, what in the world were you thinking? He Yuan's voice was piercingly cold and solemn. She didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. Since there are so few people, it's impossible to form a complete coverage. There's no need to spread out, especially when the command and deployment is far from reaching a level of finesse. This was firing cannons. Luo Nan was stunned speechless when another voice jumped out from the Hexaear as expected. Oh, people from the military are different. Then how do we command and how do we deploy? Secretary He, give us a proper explanation. Impatience seeped through the oily tone. A flashing notification appeared in the corner of the retina interface. The number was 3393. The avatar was an ugly black beetle. Love go, small, say, Neku Yuan didn't follow the rhythm of the black beetle. She just adjusted the building's structure diagram and opened up a split-screen interface in the lower right corner. It displayed a surveillance image of the hotel's interior. Luo Nen noticed that most of the faces on the screen were students. Looking at the scale and shape, it was the scene of the mutual assistance cold dinner party that he had yet to enter. He Yuan quickly made a mark on the screen. One was located at the edge of the surveillance area. They were talking to a man and a woman, Shui Lei and Chen Xiaolin. The other was standing parallel to them. The black-suited male was getting closer and closer. Clearly, this was the image from before the incident. Luo Nan could see that Shui Lei and Chen Xiaolin had quarreled. They probably had misgivings about being in a public place. After quarreling for a few sentences, they left. They probably wanted to find a quiet place to talk. The black-suited male followed behind them the entire time. Then the surveillance image switched to the elevator entrance. Luo Nan, who was drawing with his head lowered, entered the frame. Of course, there was also Zhang Yingying, who was watching from the side. Please pay attention to everyone's position at this moment. He Yuan's piercingly cold voice rang out. According to Zhang Yingying's description and the display of the war chess mode, Mr. Luo discovered the abnormality on his friend's body at this moment. He gave a warning and was ambushed by the Black Wolf behind him. Black Wolf? Luo Nan's gaze turned to the black-suited male on the ground. So this person had a code name? Speaking of which, this person was much more miserable than Shui Lei. He Yuan's attack just now had directly smashed his spine. Luo Nan didn't know if he could be saved. But He Yuan's explanation immediately stunned Luo Nan. Black Wolf is a registered member of the society. He is also a member of this search and capture operation. However, right now he is already a slave of the human-faced arachnid. He Yuan's tone was tranquil. She didn't have any other emotions because of the change in her companion's position. But the conference channel was a sheet of silence. Clearly, this fact made the others rather embarrassed. He Yuan's analysis continued at this time. We haven't found the scene of Black Wolf being infected. But according to the time of the last call, it was approximately 20 minutes ago. Then the infected Black Wolf approached the next target. From the state of his target, we have reason to believe that he has already used his methods. He has been tailing them all the way, waiting for an opportunity to reap the fruits of battle. The human-faced arachnid's methods are crude and intense. There is practically no buffer time in between. And right now, we still don't know anything. Only He Yuan's voice remained in the conference channel for the time being. Only when Mr. Luo captured the traces of the human-faced arachnid and issued a warning to his friend did we begin to move. The first wave was Zhang Yingying, who was by Mr. Luo's side. The elevator just happened to arrive at the 81st floor with a ding. There were no disturbances in between. Presumably, it was the result of special control. Luo Nan was startled when the elevator door opened. On the opposite wall was a beautiful woman with drooping shoulders against the wall. Wasn't that Zhang Yingying? This young woman, who had always radiated with vitality, was clearly receiving information from the conference channel. She had a premonition of the unpleasant evaluation that would follow. She raised her hand weakly. Hi, I'm here. Chapter 71. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Speak. Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Aside from Zhang Yingying, He Yuan's 4 subordinates were also present. They were responsible for moving the 3 unconscious people out of the elevator and settling them down. He Yuan's footsteps did not stop. She gestured with her hand, inviting Luo Nan to the society's reserved conference room. Zhang Yingying was basically ignored, but she was exceptionally obedient. She called out to Luo Nan and followed by the side without a word. She received the analysis and criticism from the Hexaear. However, He Yuan did not completely reject her. Zhang Yingying's first reaction was passable. Things happened suddenly, but she was still able to discover the abnormality of the Black Wolf and intervene. However, her biggest problem was that her attack power was severely lacking. She was unable to stop the Black Wolf from continuing to harm Mr. Luo. In fact, if Mr. Luo's friend was not an outstanding martial artist, he would be able to rely on his powerful willpower and blood energy to break away from the human-faced arachnid's further corrosion. Mr. Luo would not have been able to survive the pincer attack. Zhang Yingying's expression did not turn for the better even though she heard the evaluation. Instead, she became more gloomy. She was even a bit distracted. The group of people entered the conference room. The conference room was empty right now. There were only a few monitoring devices installed in a messy manner. He Yuan didn't even give them a glance. She invited Luo Nan to sit down and continued to analyze the relevant problems. Since all communication was carried out on the psychic wave network, the plane of reality was still a sheet of silence after they sat down. The atmosphere continued to be tense. The worst problem appeared in the second wave. First, Zhang Yingying's second reaction was very clumsy. She watched helplessly as Mr. Luo's elevator sank. She wasn't able to make any effective movements, and she wasn't able to follow up in time. Second, the support of the action team, including me, was completely disjointed. It took a full 74 seconds for Mr. Luo to be completely exposed to the threat of the Black Wolf and the human-faced arachnid. We should rejoice. We are still able to analyze the situation around Mr. Luo and not bow 3 times to his corpse. But this result has practically nothing to do with the members of the action team. Still, no one spoke. He Yuan's analysis wasn't anything out of the ordinary, but it was an ironclad fact. The clumsy response of the society's action team was completely exposed. Luo Nan saw number 3393, the black beetle who had voiced his doubts the earliest, directly log off. He exited from the conference mode. It looked like he was an arrogant and unruly fellow. Facing this, He Yuan's expression didn't change. She continued, compared to the problems exposed during the operation, what I'm most unable to understand is still the arrangement of the plan beforehand. I didn't receive the notification from the association until half an hour before the operation. There was no mission briefing either. As a secretary and a member of the security team, I only saw Mr. Luo's basic information after I arrived at the hotel. The key information was also vague. According to my understanding, Mr. Luo also didn't know anything about the operation team members. Spirit. He soul team. Team. The members of the operation team fought by themselves. They didn't utilize the abilities of psychic beings at all to realize effective command. Moreover, they placed their focus on the infected, neglecting the human-faced arachnid's ability to move independently. This caused the mission to fail completely. These are some of the problems I've discovered during the operation. Ichin. But I not. From. I. From. Don't. But I hope everyone can seriously discuss and solve the problems that have been exposed and continue to be exposed. Otherwise, our pursuit of the human-faced arachnid will only lead to continuous failures, leading to unfathomable consequences. Love, go little, say, neck over. He Yuan's long analysis finally came to an end. No one spoke for a long time in the conference channel. No one responded to her proposal. The atmosphere was awkward. Luo Nan even thought that if He Yuan's words hadn't softened a bit in the end, perhaps more people would have withdrawn like the black beetle. He could see that He Yuan's strict and serious behavior was a bit out of tune with the society's overall atmosphere. Luo Nan thought back to Zhang Yingying's evaluation of ability users this morning. The evaluation of ability users such as arrogant, wild and unruly, eccentric and perverted, and so on. Now it seemed that they weren't particularly exaggerated. At the very least, the evaluation of scattered sand was absolutely realistic. Perhaps this operation would come to an end without any progress? Unexpectedly, Zhang Ying spoke through the conference channel. Everyone, we've lost face to this extent. Aren't we afraid of making a public appearance? Tactics are needed to fight a boss. We've really underestimated the enemy by swarming over like a swarm of bees. Let's talk things over together. Zhang Ying's words were admittedly dispirited. She had the appearance of everyone come over for a farewell meal, but the effect was actually quite good. In the silent and stiff conference channel, there was a chaotic sound. Sure. Let's go up and discuss tactics. It's good to meet each other. Mr. Luo hasn't said anything yet. Has he been turned into a figurehead by the secretary? He's the vice president. Today's fortune is tomorrow's calamity. Mr. Luo really knows how to play it safe. I heard that he's still quite young? I haven't met the future vice president yet. This isn't a good start. Learning from the military's successful experience isn't bad. Speaking of which, does the vice president play the wilderness? The military has a team in the wilderness, right? The vice president should be an expert. What character does she usually use? Luo Nan was speechless. This was clearly a group of wilderness battle squads. They usually played the game 10 days in the wilderness and gathered together. He didn't know who called out to them, but they just rushed over to deal with the human-faced arachnid. They probably thought that this was the same as fighting a boss in a game? He Yuan was expressionless towards this. She just sat quietly and waited. He looked at Zhang Ying again. She was lying on the table after she finished speaking. She continued to act as if there was nothing left to live for. She felt Luo Nan's gaze and suddenly turned her head. Hey, draw another picture for me. Huh? Forget it. You don't understand anything. Zhang Ying buried her head in the crook of her arms. She was in a position where no one could see her, and she became all the more depressed. She knew that He Yuan was very impartial in her evaluation of this entire matter. But the more she was like this, the more she minded. All because of a single sentence. Her attack power was severely lacking. Ever since she entered the society, her white rainbow strike had received praise from the big shots of the society. She was known as the most explosive attack power on the awakened level. She had always been proud of this. But the truth was that she hadn't dealt enough damage to Black Wolf at all. If Black Wolf had used a heavy technique on Luonan back then it would be useless to say anything now. Zhang Ying was a bit absent-minded as she felt the clear and sharp energy flowing through her body. She inexplicably recalled Susan's words from this morning. White rainbow. Is it dull? This was the first time Zhang Ying had this sort of thought in the past 2 years. It seemed to be a bit different from what her boss had said. Chapter 72. Genius in 1 second. Remember Love Go? Speak, Net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Zhang Ying spoke of a portrait. Though it was without a head or tail, Luo Nen really did observe her. Frankly speaking, Zhang Ying had indeed changed, and it was quite big. Her entire essence, energy, and soul had changed. If Luo Nan were to draw her now, he would absolutely not draw her as a person who seemed to be in a game at all times and possessed an intense desire for victory. The influence of her emotions was actually this big? Mr. Luo. He Yuan sent a message through the hexa ear. Please enter the encrypted communication project 001. Luo Nen followed the request and entered the project module that was established at the last minute. A simple interface had already been built inside. Luo Nan was unsure of the concrete contents, but he could see that it was related to him and the human-faced arachnid. Information was constantly being updated right now, changing at every moment. Was this a template that came with the Hexier? Or was it He Yuan who built it herself? If it was the latter, then Luo Nan could only sigh in admiration at He Yuan's powerful control on the mental plane. Before the meeting, I hope to gather some information to use as a basis for decision-making. Mr. Luo, you don't mind, right? Luo Nan answered honestly, "There are some things that I don't even know how to say. It's fine. It's fine as long as you can provide first-hand information." Back in the elevator, aside from your friend, Shui Lei. Aside from Mr. Shui blocking the Black Wolf, you should have created some sort of restriction on the human-faced arachnid. Is that right? Luo Nen secretly rolled his eyes. How could the first question be so sharp? However, the heavily chained crow that was molded from his grandfather's formatting theory was an open and above-board achievement. Luo Nen didn't even have the time to publicize it. He didn't have any thoughts of keeping it to himself. What he needed to avoid was his relationship with the human-faced arachnid and his intuition as the trump card of a psychic. That was all. The problem right now was that he couldn't explain it in a short amount of time. So he could only express it rather regretfully. At the time, I felt that there was some sort of negative existence in the elevator, so I tried to use the chains to suppress it. Chains? Luo Nan was waiting for this question. He took a deep breath and expressed it as clearly as he could. This is a format constructed on the mental plane according to my grandfather's theory. Its function is to suppress the abnormal state of the body and mind. He Yuan said curiously, constructing a format on the mental plane? Do you mean the prototype format of formatting theory? Luo Nan's impassioned mood was instantly doused in cold water. He really wanted to roar in response, screw the archetype format, but he quickly recalled the source of He Yuan's strength in the elevator. Wasn't it the format of fire? Without a doubt, in the heart of a burner like her, Yen Hong's archetype formatting theory was the cornerstone of power. She wouldn't accept anything else. He actually wanted to seriously expound on his grandfather's theory. He was really stupid. Luo Nan's mood instantly turned gloomy. He didn't have the mood to explain further. He just said, "I don't know what your professional terminology is, but the general meaning is like this. Love go, small, say, neko. This theory seems very interesting. I hope to have a chance to discuss it with Mr. Luo." He Wei-yin was like an outstanding presenter. She would never easily deny the opinions of others, yet she always grasped the core theme. Can Mr. Luo describe the feeling of directly confronting the human-faced arachnid? For example, the performance of the human-faced arachnid's abilities? Luo Nen didn't respond immediately. He needed to sort out the relevant information and protect his own trump card. He needed a certain amount of time. He Wei-yin wasn't just a questioner and a listener. She felt Luo Nan's hesitation and she first shared her own experience. Actually, yesterday I joined forces with my comrades to exterminate a human-faced arachnid clone. Today I encountered it again. The difference from yesterday's clone is quite clear. Yesterday? Luo Nan was a bit surprised. Mr. Luo should know. It's the source of the human-faced arachnid incident, the research and development area. The military transport ship Lan Shan. It's her. That blade light, there's no mistaking it. Luo Nan's loosened memory barrier opened up like this. He instantly connected the thin woman in front of him with the deep blue walker who had slain the burning wraith on the military transport ship yesterday. The feeling of that blade light was completely compatible. Yes, this was the slayer who had slain the burning wraith that he had subdued. Sure enough, this was a world piled up by coincidences. They could be considered to have a grudge between them. Luo Nan didn't really care, but the question he had been keeping in his stomach suddenly emerged. Sister, he can activate the format of fire without the deep blue armor? What Luo Nan really wanted to ask was, why do I feel that the strength you unleashed in the elevator is even stronger than when you're wearing the armor? Unfortunately, this kind of self-exposing question could only be kept in his stomach. He Yuan didn't find it strange that Luo Nan was certain that she was a deep blue walker. In this world, deep blue walkers and burners had a 1-2-2-1 relationship. The format of fire can already exist without the armor starting from the third generation of burners. After all, technology is constantly advancing. He Wei-yin didn't explain in depth. Instead, she went back to the original topic. Compared to the one we killed before, this human-faced arachnid clone's ability to interfere with reality has clearly increased. It can forcefully infect and control an awakened like the Black Wolf. It can also quickly extract its strength. If this happened on the ship, it would be very hard for us to successfully surround and kill it. Luo Nan used the hexaear to flip through the society's information and combined it with his own personal experience. He didn't feel that there was anything hard to understand. It must have devoured many of its own kind. With 8 or 10 of them piling up together, its ability will naturally increase by a level. He Yueyin responded, "The hunt for the human-faced arachnid has just begun. Right now in the entire Xia city, not counting us, there are only 2 successful examples. There are 3 other failures. Even though there isn't any more detailed information, we can see from the briefing that the human-faced arachnid clone we're facing clearly has a strength that's a level higher. Forcefully infecting an awakened is the only case. I didn't mention it just now, but I feel that the most important problem lies in the judgment of intelligence. It is impossible to form an effective chain of information by relying solely on the strength of the society's psychics. In addition, Quantum Corporation is certainly still holding back. The military and the higher-ups of the society have already re-entered the R&D area to investigate the scene. I hope to find something new." The sound of a door rang out, interrupting their conversation. Ability users that were spread out on every floor arrived one after another. These people had all sorts of appearances, but they all had one thing in common. They were all quite curious about Luo Nan and He Yueyin. Zhang Yingying also raised her head, forcing herself to help them introduce. Truthfully speaking, Luo Nan really didn't remember many of them. He only remembered that the black carapace beetle didn't come. It looked like they had truly fallen out. Chapter 73. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Sweat. I came back later than I expected. Everyone, please forgive me. Since they were all sitting together, He Yueyin no longer conversed with Luo Nan alone. She began the meeting. He Yueyin had already established her position in the society through her accomplishment of single-handedly repelling the human-faced arachnid's clone in the elevator. She had analyzed the previous problems. Of course, she had a faint military background. No one expressed any dissatisfaction with her presiding over the meeting, at least on the surface. As for Luo Nan, he was still in the stage where he was being observed. Gazes fell on his face, and all of them were straightforward playfulness and curiosity. There was no concealment whatsoever. Luo Nan was also observing them. If the operation continued, his safety would be greatly affected by these people. Of course, he couldn't be careless. He didn't remember it during the initial introduction, so he could only study it hard during the meeting. Luo Nan really admired his secretary when it came to this. It was only during their introductions that he learned that He Yueyin had also just retired from the military. She had joined the Wilderness Explorers Association less than a day ago and was a newcomer, just like him. But with the same experience, He Yueyin could clearly remember the names and nicknames of all the participants. There was no hindrance in communicating during the meeting, and she also had a clear understanding of everyone's duty and movement within the hotel. This was not just a matter of memory, but also a matter of whether one was diligent or not. Speaking of meetings, the initial format was quite casual. He Yueyin didn't walk down one topic after another. Instead, she followed the same pattern of communication she had with Luo Nan. She chatted and gathered information from all sides. Luo Nan didn't exit Project 001, so he could clearly see that the template's contents were being updated and adjusted at lightning speed. The blueprints of the Limestone Water Village pub also became more and more detailed. It could be seen that He Yueyin was attempting to reverse engineer the movements of the human-faced arachnid. She wanted to see how it would make its move against the Black Wolf. However, she was unable to see the results at the moment. Luo Nan felt quite familiar with this sort of intuitive deduction method. Love go, small, say, Netkuhi opened his notebook subconsciously. The flexible e-ink screen was still on the drawing interface. To him, the abstract and precise structure of the wraith sign was particularly eye-catching among the messy lines. The drawing interface stopped at the moment when he sensed the existence of the human-faced arachnid and warned Shuele. Luo Nan was a bit spellbound as he looked at the chaotic lines on the interface. What he could confirm was that he had not truly seen the human-faced arachnid in the instant he had drawn the wraith sign. What had stimulated him was an intense yet fuzzy feeling. It was similar to an incomparably mysterious intuition. Luo Nan was no stranger to this feeling. When he added his drawings, the self-portrait of the prison building, the sketch of the capture of Li Xueqing, they were all pieced together by the details of this intuitive inspiration. If he used Zhang Yingying's description of a shaman as a standard, this was the only ability he could rely on. Bang! Someone in the conference room slammed the table. Luo Nan was also alarmed. He originally thought that it was someone who was dissatisfied with He Yueyin, but when he raised his head, he discovered that it was actually a group of ability users. They had inexplicably sunk into an argument. It seemed that some problems were triggered as the content of the conversation gradually deepened. In a peaceful state, everyone was smiling, and no difference could be seen. But at this time, almost everyone in the conference room had emotions, but they showed different faces. Some were anxious, some were angry, some were absent-minded, some were disappointed, and some were watching coldly from the sidelines. Luo Nan felt that this was quite interesting. He took out his digital pen, and the tip of the pen fell down, sketching on the flexible e-ink screen. The originally chaotic lines underwent a bit of embellishment, transforming into a muddy and turbulent river. The structure of the wraith sign was hidden within the tightly woven lines. Then he drew a few sketched fish within these lines. They were either undulating within the waves, leaping out of the water, or diving to the bottom of the river. Their postures and temperaments were all different. They symbolized certain people in the conference room. But there was one thing that was the same. Every fish was bobbing within the river, affected by the waves and the current. Luo Nan used this to symbolize complex emotions and willpower. Love go, small, say, next. Luo Nan drew a small boat on the surface of the river. The chains and anchors hung down to symbolize himself. Perhaps he was originally a member of the people bobbing within the river, but because of the heavily chained crow, his position was anchored and he was somewhat detached. As for He Yueyin, her situation was similar to his. As a burner, she possessed the power of the format. She was like a reef in the water. As for the human-faced arachnid, it was a hunter hidden deep within the river. It used negative emotions as a primer, waiting for an opportunity to strike. It could permeate and exert influence on other people, but it could only meet force with force against Luo Nan and He Yueyin. This was where his advantage lay. The tip of the pen reached this point, and a line of thought suddenly became clear in Luo Nan's mind. Picking Black Wolf to make a move shouldn't be a coincidence. How could the human-faced arachnid have the luck to randomly pick an awakened? Luo Nan thought about Xuelei. He was also an excellent resource. His blood and energy were abundant. He was a top-notch tonic. Perhaps the human-faced arachnid had chosen every single person present. It had made contact with every single person, but no one had detected it. Yes, there was a specter like this. It had once floated above everyone's head, and then it had chosen the one it liked the most. It was also the most unlucky one. Just like now, the wraith sign hidden in the turbid river was connected to every fish through the lines that passed through it. Mr. Luo. What? Luo Nan woke up from his trance with a start and discovered that someone was greeting him. The one who spoke was a tall and skinny young man. His nickname should be Bamboo Pole. He always had a cheeky smile on his face. He looked like an optimist, but his words were very sharp. Mr. Luo's psychic ability, accuracy, and sharpness need not be mentioned. There have already been facts to verify it. Then what's the range of coverage? I heard President He say that we need to create tactics around psychics. Is it close combat or is it long-range bombardment? We need to figure this out, right? Luo Nan smiled bitterly and looked at Zhang Ying. She was the one who put the hat on him. She was the one who explained it. Zhang Ying glared back, but she still opened her mouth. Luo Nan just joined the society. He doesn't understand anything. He needs to let old you appraise him and give him some pointers. He needs to have a basic concept. But Bamboo Pole was unforgiving. I heard that Mr. Luo's psychic ability is presented in drawings? I've seen you draw and draw all this time. Do you have any inspiration? Oh, not really. Of course Luonan wouldn't say that he was drawing a picture of them and that he felt that they were all going to be swallowed up. Luonan discovered that he was being targeted in response. This group of ability users had enough of quarreling internally. They began to exert their strength externally. Hiyuan wasn't easy to deal with, so they picked a soft persimmon like him to pinch. When all was said and done, it was because he wasn't convinced. I saw it all. The one who raised her hand and laughed was a woman nicknamed Cat Eyes. She was roughly 30 years old and had a hot figure. She wore heavy makeup and looked like a bar dancer. Luonan had a deep impression of her because her ability was long-range perception. It was already very similar to a psychic, but it wasn't effective against dark-side or life forms. She played the role of a scout in the team. Now Luonan had seen it for himself. Separated by the conference table, he was at least 7 to 8 meters away from Cat Eyes. She could even see it? There were already people jeering at this time. Kitty, what did he draw? It's fine if Mr. Luo's face is tender. We can do it ourselves. Yeah. This is the first time I've seen this type. Kitty, you interpret it for us. Cat Eyes was the type who wished for the world to be in chaos. She didn't care about Luonan's expression and giggled as she opened her mouth to describe. This drawing has a very messy appearance. It's like a river. There are boats and reefs on the river. There are small fish swimming below. And then? Luonan was a bit helpless against this sort of noisy character. He wanted to put away the digital pen, but the pen tip sank a bit. It was as if an invisible thread had wrapped around it. There was a sudden reaction on the mental plane. The chains rattled and trembled. The wraith sign at the front also seemed to flicker with light. Luonan subconsciously moved his pen and a marvelous feeling appeared. It was as if he had brought something with him. Cat Eyes, who had been giggling, suddenly went mute at this moment. Blood seeped out from the corner of her eyes and she fell backwards. Chapter 74. A genius in 1 second remembers love? Speak Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. The chairs in the conference room were quite stable. Cat Eyes bumped into the back of the chair, causing it to sway slightly and push her body forward. Her entire body was as soft as a noodle. Clearly, she had completely lost consciousness. She swayed a few more times before finally falling forward. Her forehead bumped into the conference table with a muffled sound. She did not react at all. The tip of the pen in Luonan's hand suddenly stopped. Aside from Cat Eyes' strange reaction, countless blurry and chaotic scenes suddenly exploded before his eyes. There were even more peculiar sounds, smells, and other signals. They surged over one after another. This was absolutely not the stimulation of his senses from the external environment. Instead, it was information signals that were directly transferred to his nervous system. There was no logic behind it. There was no distinction between primary and secondary. They just swarmed over like a swarm of bees. Luonan was already extremely familiar with how to deal with this enormous amount of information. He did not attempt to analyze it at all. Instead, he directly transmitted it through the heavily chained crow and sent it into the external neuron. Luonan was able to understand what this sudden and unforeseen event was all about because he had this familiar scene as a comparison. He had dug out a piece from the body of the human-faced arachnid in the elevator. He had received a large amount of energy and a huge amount of information that could make one's brain stop. Right now in the conference room, the impetuous woman Cat Eyes was using her ability to spy on Luonan's creation. Little did she know that this creation was a part of Luonan's ability to operate on the mental plane. Frankly speaking, this sort of spying was extremely stupid. Cat Eyes had swapped places with the human-faced arachnid. She took the initiative to deliver herself to Luonan's doorstep when Luonan's mental plane was the most active. Then she was pierced through by the heavily chained crow. The chains and the wraith sign dug out a piece from her without a trace of politeness. The contents involved Cat Eyes' most proficient memories of long-range perception. The specific contents would need to be analyzed by the external neuron. Bang! Someone slammed the table when they saw Cat Eyes' miserable appearance. Kid Luo! What the hell are you doing? Bang! Someone beside Luo Nen also slammed the table and stood up. You bunch of idiots. What the hell are you doing when a psychic is working? The one who stood up and roared was Zhang Yingying. Perhaps it was because she had an instinctive protective heart towards the talent she had unearthed herself. She stood up without the slightest hesitation and tore at her friend. Her imposing manner soared to the heavens. When old you burns the turtle shell, why don't you try pouring a basin of water on it? Why don't you try smashing old Gao's altar when he's casting the spell? Try slapping Lao Bai's face when he's in the dream. Even if you don't know about manners, you should at least know about taboos, right? Since when did shamans become someone you can flirt with at any time? After a round of reprimanding, regardless of whether they were convinced or not, the group of ability users were all dumbfounded. At this moment, Cat Eye's shoulder moved. She began to show signs of regaining consciousness. The people at the side crowded around to take a look. Approximately 5 or 6 seconds passed before Cat Eyes finally regained her wits. She sat up straight with the help of someone. She blinked her eyes and had a blank expression on her face. What happened? Did he lose his memory? Someone stretched out his finger. Kitty, how many is this? Scram. Cat Eye's vitality did not diminish in the slightest as she scratched with her long manicured fingers. She quickly recovered and began to feel annoyed that there were too many people crowding around her. She waved her hand to chase them away. Love go, small, say, Netku, what happened just now? Give me a clear explanation. How would I know? Cat Eye's voice was sharp and clear when she spoke. But when she looked at Luo Nan, she clearly felt a bit weak. I was just looking at the painting and feeling the changes in his aura in passing. I wanted to see if this painting was for real or just to scare people. Oh, more than half of the people rolled their eyes. Just looking at the painting was fine. Why did you have to feel his aura? When a psychic was working, the rise and fall of his aura was equivalent to the life and death combat state of a combatant. A single mistake would cause a reversal. Who knew what the consequences would be? Zhang Yingying slammed the table on the spot. Kitty, do you not want to live anymore? Cat Eyes was clearly a bit embarrassed. I was just trying. I was just curious. There are a few psychics in the society. Each and every one of them are hidden like thieves. It's rare to see such an interesting lad. Mr. Luo? Hiyuein completely ignored the ruckus of these unreliable people. She noticed that Luo Nan had not opened his mouth to speak for a long time. Zhang Yingying turned her head when she heard this. She saw Luo Nan with his half-opened eyes and a stupefied expression. It didn't seem like he was angry. It seemed like he had lost consciousness. Cat Eyes. She no longer affectionately called her Kitty. She directly called her by her full nickname. This proved that Zhang Yingying was truly angry. Luo Nan is just a rookie. Do you understand? Plus, he's a gifted student, not a systematic student. He doesn't know any taboos. Especially psychics. They can't even protect him in time. Yet you purposely poke him. Do you even have the intelligence of a professional? Whether it was Cat Eyes or the friends by his side, they all knew that they had caused a huge disaster. Each and every one of them shrunk their heads, not uttering a single word. Hiyuein pressed against her ears for a moment. She frowned at Zhang Yingying and said, I've been looking for old you. I haven't been able to contact him. He might be in a psychic state. I don't know how to contact Mr. Gao and Mr. Bai. You contact them and ask how to handle this situation. Oh, okay. Zhang Yingying knew that the situation was urgent. She immediately did as she was told. Cough. I'm not a gifted student. I'm a systematic student. A sudden voice rang out. Luo Nan raised his half-closed eyelids and corrected Zhang Yingying's misunderstanding once more. Zhang Yingying was startled and then overjoyed. She wanted to pat Luo Nan on the shoulder, but she thought for a bit. In the end, she didn't dare to do so. She just slapped the table in passing. As long as you're fine, you'll be a systematic student in the future. In the future, if anyone is blind enough to dare say that you're a gifted student, I'll chop them in half. As she spoke, her gaze swept across the faces of a few unreliable fellows across from her. Cat Eyes immediately raised her hands in surrender. Yes. I'm a systematic student without a doubt. Even Cat Eyes, the instigator of all this, was kneeling. The others grunted and groaned. They could only tacitly agree to this preposterous classification. Hiyuane's cold and hard fingers pressed against the side of Luo Nan's neck. She felt the amount of blood flowing through his aorta. Her other hand gently placed on his forehead. She spoke softly. Are there any symptoms of congestion or ischemia in your brain? Dizziness, blackness in front of your eyes? Luo Nen shook his head a bit awkwardly. I'm fine. Luo Nen really was fine. His mind was clear from the very beginning. The reason why he didn't react to the outside world was because his attention was completely focused on the external neuron. Though the two pieces of information that had been dug up could both be described as enormous, the contents of Cat Eyes' long-range perception were nothing in comparison. The external neuron was still in the process of analyzing the human-faced arachnid's information. However, Cat Eyes had already finished analyzing the information within a short dozen or so seconds. Luo Nan's mind stirred slightly and the interface of the flexible e-ink screen appeared on his retina. He noticed that the number of icons on the interface had changed once more. Chapter 75. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Just like in the underground laboratory, on the main interface of the flexible ink screen, there was only one additional icon. It wasn't the previously existing gear, but it still had an extremely familiar appearance. The tetrahedron, inscribed sphere, and circumscribed sphere. Luo Nan's visualization diagram. However, the icon was dark as a hole. It was as if an application had been downloaded, but the download and installation had not been completed. Most of it was still in the shadows, and only a very small portion was lit up. The progress showed 1%? It was surprisingly slow. Luo Nan's telepathic thoughts swept over the surface. He made some basic information clear, but doubts followed. In the end, how much did he dig out from the body of the human-faced arachnid? If he wanted to express the theme, shouldn't it be displayed as Wraith Sign, or something? What did it have to do with visualization? These questions could only be answered after the download analysis was completed. Luo Nan paid attention to another matter. The results of his analysis of Cat Eyes were not displayed on the main interface. He felt that there was a layer separating him from it when he wanted to touch it. There seemed to be some tricks to it. Hey, are you okay? Zhang Yingying, as well as the other people in the conference room, saw Luo Nan inexplicably enter a trance state after replying with a few sentences. Their hearts grew more and more uncertain. Being a shaman was a profession that involved mysterious things on the spiritual level. It was really not easy to grasp. Other than old Yugao Deshuan, who was well cultivated and didn't seem to have any abnormalities, the rest of the spirit mediums in the association were all a little neurotic. It was said that it had something to do with the backlash they received when they used their abilities in their early years. Zhang Yingying could not help but glare angrily at Cat Eyes, who knew that Luo Nan's line of sight would move at this time. He moved in sync with Zhang Yingying and pointed at Cat Eyes. Love go, small, say, neck. Cat Eyes was already a bit immune to Zhang Yingying's angry glare. But when Luo Nan looked at her with an unreadable expression, her heart suddenly skipped a beat. She was inexplicably nervous. Hey, what are you so nervous about? Even Cat Eyes herself could not bear to watch her overly abnormal emotions. She had always been a troublemaker. She was careless, and her courage was outrageous. She had always prided herself on this. However, ever since she caused trouble just now, she felt that her heart had no roots and she had really become an obedient cat. Now that she was facing Luo Nan, the feeling of weakness continued to sprout. Finally, her self-consciousness counterattacked. He was yelled at by Zhang Yingying just now because they were friends. Who the hell do you think you are? Cat Eyes immediately widened her eyes. She glared back at Luo Nan, and her mouth became even more unrestrained. What? You want compensation? Sure, can I sleep with you? According to her observations of Luo Nan, This introverted and immature kid would most likely be unable to resist. In the end, Zhang Yingying would have to take the lead. When the time came, she would pester him endlessly for a bit and give him a more or less reasonable explanation. But the problem was that Luo Nan's gaze was completely devoid of any emotions that could be interpreted. Luo Nan was not affected by any external emotions, including Cat Eye's deliberate provocation. Luo Nan saw that Zhang Yingying wanted to slap the table again, but he just nodded to Cat Eyes. "Come over and help me out, okay?" Everyone in the conference room looked at each other in dismay. Cat Eyes pointed at herself and said, "Me? Hold on. This posture is too weak." Cat Eyes wanted to flip out again, but Luo Nan had already lowered his head. His digital pen fell onto the flexible e-ink screen once more. "What are you pretending for at such a young age?" Cat Eyes let out a laugh. She suddenly jumped over from the table without any warning. Her 12-centimeter roots were as tall as the heavens, and she landed noiselessly. Her movements were nimble and she was truly like a large cat. The thick and dizzying smell of perfume covered the entire area. She supported herself on the table with one hand and half of her body turned into a shadow. She fell onto the flexible e-ink screen in Luo Nan's hand. "Hey, pretentious kid. How do you want me to help you? It can't be that you can't draw a picture, so you want to find a scapegoat in the end, right?" Luo Nan glanced at her. He just felt that this woman was unreasonable. But sudden inspiration was very precious. He didn't want to make a mistake, so he simply lowered his head and looked straight at the flexible e-ink screen. He said, "Don't talk. Try your best not to let your imagination run wild. Look at this picture of mine. What do you think? You want to harm me again?" Thinking back to the miserable state of her bloodshot eyes, Cat Eyes felt a bit weak in her heart. It wasn't easy for her imposing manner to rise, but it rapidly declined. Zhang Yingying pushed her from behind. "I've already looked at it several dozen times. Nothing happened. You're clearly looking to die, okay? Who knows if you guys are having an affair or not?" Cat Eyes casually mocked back. She squinted her eyes, looking as if she wanted to look but did not dare to look. "Shut up." Luo Nan's commanding words entered her ears, and Cat Eyes' heart skipped a beat. She really did not speak anymore. Her eyes opened a bit and she looked towards Luo Nan's flexible e-ink screen. She had already used her long-range perception to scan this sketch, but she did not discover anything strange about it. But now that she obeyed Luo Nan's command, her gaze fell down, and the feeling was completely different. There were all sorts of figures on the sketch. For example, a small boat with chains hanging down. There were reefs that faced the wind and waves. They were all extremely eye-catching. But she inexplicably locked the focus of her gaze onto a certain fish that seemed to be swimming in circles within the muddy river. "It looks a lot like me," an absurd thought assaulted her mind. Then she saw Luo Nan's digital pen fall down. It drew out many lines around the fish that she was gazing at. It even drew out its body. Strangely enough, her mind became a bit absent-minded when these lines appeared. It was as if the lines did not fall onto the flexible e-ink screen, but rather they were being pulled out from her body. There was an incorporeal specter reaching out with its hand. It seemed to be gently caressing, but it also seemed to be cutting into her internal organs and skull, dissecting her entire body. When this thought became clear, Cat Eyes' body froze on the spot. The group of ability users saw Luo Nan draw on the spot. Luo Nan's pretentiousness was raised high, and their curiosity was piqued. They all gathered around in a circle. From their perspective, Luo Nan's sketch appeared chaotic at first glance, but it was extremely intuitive. The originally chaotic interweaving river structure inexplicably cleared out a relatively clear trajectory as the tip of the pen moved. It clearly symbolized the route that the fish had taken to get here. Some of the quick-witted ones vaguely understood that this seemed to be tracing back to something that had happened before. Psychics could trace back to the past. They could foresee the future. The conference room was silent for a time. No one dared to disturb the work of a genuine psychic. "Sister He." Luo Nan suddenly spoke once more. This was just a habitual action, but he quickly reacted. He switched to the psychic wave network and entered Project 001 to converse with He Yuan. At this time, A blurry figure appeared on the structural map of the Limestone Water Village pub. He tried to find a matching area within it. The problem was that Luo Nan was unfamiliar with the operation, so he could only seek help from others. Luo Nan and He Yuan's little movements could not be hidden from others. The group of ability users did not need to think to know what was going on. They immediately rushed into the encrypted channel and switched to Project 001. The only one who did not do this was Cat Eyes. At this very moment, she was completely unable to divert any energy. Her legs, which were wrapped in black stockings, were trembling uncontrollably. If she had not used her hands to support herself on the table, she might have already fallen to her knees. That specter, that incorporeal specter, was not satisfied with dissecting her completely. It began to greedily devour her. Cat Eyes could only feel her strength rapidly draining away. Her consciousness grew more and more absent-minded. And the source of all of this? She could still see the tip of the pen on the flexible e-ink screen. It seemed to be flowing, but every minute pause was a heavy bombardment on the mental plane. Luo Nan. It could only be Luo Nan. This demon. Cat Eyes recalled the entire process from beginning to end and suddenly understood. This was clearly a conspiracy, a set of traps. It was a demon ritual that was publicly launched under the watchful eyes of everyone. Chapter 76. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Sure, Net provides you with wonderful novels to read. Under the stimulation of anger, Cat Eyes felt that her thoughts were unprecedentedly clear. She wanted to destroy this demon's scheme. She immediately opened her mouth to shout, but only then did she discover that not a single muscle in her body was listening to her commands. Anger was only a temporary flame, while fear was a boundless tide that would extinguish the flame as soon as it rose. At this time, all of Cat Eye's strength had melted away in the great tide of fear. At the same time, her will had melted away as well. In the tide of fear, feelings of regret began to emerge. This demon, he's been eyeing me for a long time? Or is it because I bumped into him? God, I'm so stupid. Amidst her self-reproach, Cat Eyes was like a sacrificial offering placed on an altar. Her body could not move, her mouth could not speak, and even her thoughts gradually stiffened. Only his blood and soul flowed out bit by bit, flowing to an unknown destination. She tried to find the home of her blood and soul, but in a daze, it was as if she had fallen into a boundless dark prison. In the restless darkness, the treacherous and cold 6 spots of light lit up. The blurry silhouette around it moved its many legs and gradually approached. His already stiff consciousness suddenly moved, receiving a stimulus. It was a vivid memory from the target's information. Human-faced arachnid? Why the human-faced arachnid? In her daze, no one could answer her questions, let alone ease her fear. When the human-faced arachnid's image became clear, the surrounding dark veil seemed to come alive. It possessed its own meaning. The twisting darkness at the front of the human-faced arachnid that was constantly drawing closer to her must be its ugly mouth. He was going to be chewed, corroded, and swallowed. No, absolutely not. Cat Eyes suddenly came to a realization that came from the spiritual perception of an awakened. It didn't matter if this was a devil's ritual or if it was a trap or a plot. If she was truly devoured by the human-faced arachnid right now, she would certainly be consigned to eternal damnation. She would never have the chance to start over again. Help, help. Someone save me. Cat Eyes howled at the top of her lungs in the gradually muddled mental plane. But on the plane of reality, she merely hung her head and trembled slightly. Love go, small net chew. The more she sensed the real situation, the more despair she felt. What kind of power could confine her in this terrifying darkness? Was there no power that could save her? Voila! A strange trembling sound rang out. From the deepest part of the darkness, a long chain shimmering with a faint light suddenly pierced through. This was a change that Cat Eyes could not comprehend at all. But she was faced with the desperate situation of the human-faced arachnids devouring. She struggled to grab hold of any variable. If both of them were in a hopeless situation, she would choose the relatively better one. She focused all of her consciousness and screamed desperately, "Help, help." The chains clearly sensed her summons and came crashing through the air. Cat Eyes did not have the slightest intention of evading. She allowed the chains to pierce through her body and pierce through her soul. She did not feel any pain. Instead, she felt a strange sense of support. She tried her best to penetrate the shackles into every corner of her body and mind. The walala, trembling sound disappeared and was replaced by a strange ka-su-ah-su-ah-su sound. Every time a chain was locked, it would be dead. From Cat Eyes' perspective, this represented a safety rope on the body of a person in danger. Every time a chain was locked, she felt a wonderful sense of security and satisfaction. Then, Cat Eyes felt herself rise up and gradually leave this darkness. Her strength gradually recovered and her consciousness entered the plane of reality. She faintly felt that something was wrong. But the incomparably realistic experience of the mental plane collided with reality. It was as if she was placed in a half-awake and half-awake dream. Everything that was inconceivable seemed to be as it should be. She even took the initiative to enter the psychic wave network and went to Project 001 where everyone was gathered. At this time, she was completely capable of letting out a cry for help that she had not been able to before. But this thought had just emerged when it was extinguished like a bubble in the face of enormous fear and uncertainty. Cat Eyes had a feeling that the chains that pierced through her body and soul were her support. But a single sound could strangle her to death. In other words, her life was completely in the hands of the chain's controller. This was completely illogical, but Cat Eyes did not have the courage to verify it in her current dazed and chaotic mental state. Right now, all she wanted was for this damnable operation to end quickly so that she could properly sort out the logic within. Or perhaps, the controller of the chain. Cat Eyes' gaze fell upon Luo Nan's body. It was him, this demon. It would be fine if he could give her a clear explanation. But from beginning to end, Luo Nan did not give her a single glance or a single hint. It was to the point that Cat Eyes sometimes wondered if everything that was happening before her eyes was just a hallucination of a mental patient. And at this time, an astonishing development occurred in Project 001. A low clamor sounded in the encrypted communications channel. It's right. It's right. Where is this? Everyone's attention was focused there, including Cat Eyes. The dream and reality were connected. The two mutually permeated each other. Everything became as it should be. Project 001 had already turned into a conference channel. Cat Eyes' late arrival did not attract anyone's attention. Everyone focused their attention on the structural diagram of Limestone Water Village Pub. The diagram that Luo Nan took out corresponded to a certain part of the diagram. The diagram that came from Luo Nan was a variant of a hexagram. The corners were slightly rounded. This sort of structure did not exist on any of the floors of the building. However, when Yuan changed her train of thought and piled up the floor plans of each floor, the answer suddenly appeared. It's the west side of the 16th, 17th, and 18th floors. The rooms of the 3 floors are grouped together. It belongs to a KTV club. Yuan came to a conclusion after looking through the hotel's information. The relevant information was immediately converted into psychic wave information and transmitted directly into everyone's brain. Yuan's move, even with the support of the hexaear, was an extremely high-level application on the mental plane. It was hard for normal awakened to even dream of it. But at this time, no one expressed any astonishment. This was because all the astonished emotions had long since been filled up by Luo Nan. Zhang Yingying's question represented practically everyone. What does this position represent? Is it the hiding place of the human-faced arachnid? I believe that this is just a place where it once stayed. Moreover, it played a crucial role in forming its current state. Luo Nan honestly explained according to the feeling he got from his drawing. He also felt that he was becoming more and more like a psychic. But you went straight to the 21st floor. You've never been here before, right? No. You've never been here before? This is my first time here. Even though the large living area had an awe-inspiring reputation within Acumen College, this was Luo Nan's first time here. On the other side, Bamboo Pole could not help but speak in doubt. Then how did you come up with this diagram? Out of thin air? Luo Nan still answered every question. I've never been here before. But Cat Eyes should have been here before. In an instant, everyone's gazes turned to Cat Eyes in unison. Of course, this mode didn't mean that everyone had to squeeze into the same elevator. The 13 of them were divided into 2 groups. Luo Nan, He Yuan, Zhang Yingying, the 3 bodyguards, and the society's Cragburst. A total of 7 people walked through the elevator. The power to protect Luo Nan was strengthened to the greatest degree. The other 6 people maintained a certain distance. They descended rapidly from the fire escape passageway and the inclined surface of the outer wall of the building. They formed a resonance with Luo Nan and the others. The hexaear was used to maintain communication in the middle. In case they encountered an attack from the human-faced arachnid, or if Luo Nan formed a clear response, they would quickly form an encirclement of support. The strategy was simple and crude, but it was very suitable for this temporary combination. Only the awakened could achieve such a direct method of advancement. Among them, Cat Eyes was nimble and lithe, as well as her long-range perception ability. She naturally became the scouting vanguard, and she was also one of the members that descended from the building. She shuttled back and forth amidst the interweaving lights and shadows of the building. The cold autumn night wind blew against her face. In the past, it would have been so carefree. But now, it was unable to blow away the knot in her heart. Cat Eyes was still hoping that she would be far away from Luo Nan. The situation of being bound and restrained would take a turn for the better. But when she deliberately dashed forward, putting a distance of 100 meters between them, the incorporeal chains continued to exist. Some of the chains were even buckling together. They made a clicking sound that was neither too fast nor too slow that only she could hear. She could not help but tremble with every sound that rang out. Although the physical distance was pulled apart, she was clearly getting closer and closer to the master of the chains on the mental plane. It was absolutely not an emotional distance. Instead, it was a terrifying magnification and distortion. Luo Nan's current state of mind was tranquil and slightly depressed. From Cat Eye's perspective, it was like the gray clouds of the desert sky were pressing down on her head. She unconsciously felt a bit suffocated. She seemed to be able to hold on for now, but she did not dare to imagine what would happen to her if Luo Nan became irritable and furious. "Kitty, you're rushing forward too much." Zhang Yingying reminded her through the hexaear. Cat Eyes snorted to herself. Her tall and slender roots drew a long mark on the glass wall, stopping her downward momentum. She speculated maliciously in her mind. Did Luo Nan tie up this Zhang Yingying long ago? Did she wag her tail and beg for pity? Does Her Majesty Empress Wu know about this? But soon, reason and her senses simultaneously told her that this was clearly not the case. Up until now, she was the only unlucky person in the vicinity. This answer made Cat Eyes even more vexed. Currently, Cat Eyes was the first to reach the 20th floor. She had taken the 5 floors up and down, a vast area of 50 meters in diameter, into the range of her senses. According to the plan, she leaped into the hallway of the building and walked down the fire escape. At the same time, she reported the situation. It really is a KTV. It's also a clubhouse, the kind that hurts the eyes. Humph, the age composition is seriously low. Young people these days. Cat Eyes entered the clubhouse, which was decorated in a blurry and strange style. It was like a maze, just like the vast majority of similar places. Cat Eyes was dressed in a fiery dancer outfit. She fit in quite well. The young boys passing by cast their gazes at her. Occasionally, they would bump into a waiter, but they would be confused by the thick makeup on her face. In a moment of stupefaction, they would pass by her. Cat Eyes swayed her long legs. She seemed to be leisurely, but she was actually very nimble as she passed through the rooms on the 3 floors. In the end, she arrived at the 16th floor. According to the floor plan, This was one of the largest rooms in the hexagram structure. Right now, a fiery party was going on inside. Although she did not enter the room, her sight, hearing, and smell had already clearly reproduced the situation inside with her long-range senses. Cat eyes lazily transmitted, "No ability users have been discovered. Do you want to do an on-the-spot investigation?" This time, it was Hiyuain who spoke. "Don't destroy the scene. Wait until Mr. Luo arrives before handling it." Just as the call ended, someone swayed over from behind. It was a young lad. His age could not be over 20, but it was clear that he was very experienced. He pretended to be dizzy and simply reached out with his hand to touch Cat Eyes' perky buttocks. However, when he was 2 centimeters away, the young drunkard felt a pain in his wrist. He inexplicably swung his body to the side and slammed into the wall with a bang. The young drunkard was in a daze. Just as his anger was rising, he was suddenly dumbfounded. Cat Eyes was silently leaning against the wall to the side. The sexy curves in the tight sequined dance costume, the long legs wrapped in black stockings, and the thin and tall legs that stretched the soles of her feet, together with the wall and the floor, naturally formed a soul-stirring shape. Her casually scattered short curly hair covered a small half of her face. Her fiery red lips faintly opened and closed, forming a smile that was not a smile. "Little brother, do you have a cigarette?" The young drunkard immediately forgot about his previous encounter. He chuckled foolishly, "I don't have any on me, but I do have some inside. Our Mystic Arts Research Society does this. Let's go together." He reached out with his hand to touch Cat Eyes' towering chest. However, what welcomed him was the world spinning once more. This time, his head slammed into the wall and he immediately fainted. Chapter 78. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go? Speak, Net, providing you with wonderful novels to read. Cat Eyes exerted her strength ingeniously. She let the young drunkard support himself with his shoulders and feet. He was half leaning and half crooked, maintaining his body from falling. Love go little Netku. In addition to the flirtatious beauty at his side, it was a typical case of a pervert meeting a flirtatious ghost. They were about to fool around together. The waiters that passed by occasionally cast curious glances at them at most. They didn't have any other reactions. Cat Eyes just waited at the door. She even had the leisure to pull out a lady's cigarette and light it. She casually asked in the channel, "What the hell is the Mystic Arts Research Society?" There are 6 schools nearby. There are 4 societies with the same name. The Mystic Arts has been quite popular in recent years. The figure just now was a variation of the Star of David. It doesn't seem like a coincidence. Bamboo Pole, who was in charge of intelligence work, indicated for Cat Eyes to lift up the drunkard's face. He gave her a face recognition and soon came to an answer. Huang Bingjin, Acumen College's Mystic Arts Research Society officer. He's a rich second generation. Acumen College. Zhang Yingying let out an unclear laugh. Unfortunately, no one besides Luo Nan understood. Bamboo Pole continued. In addition, I discovered something amazing in the club's database. Take a look at what it is. A contact list. They're all female students. The information is complete. The types are plentiful. There's everything you need. But a strange silence appeared in the channel until Cragburst, who was next to Luo Nan, cursed and revealed the secret. They're charging by the head. Bamboo Pole, why don't you go die? Cragburst was a 2-meter-tall brawny man. He had spent nearly 10 years in the military. His temperament was a bit coarse, but he was an extremely good choice for a bodyguard and shield. It was because of his military background that he was the most respectful and cooperative towards Hiyuain. Love go, little, say, Netkuhi instinctively glanced over, but Hiyuain's expression didn't change. It was as if she hadn't heard a thing. Bamboo Pole didn't forget about proper business in the private channel. The database contains the agreement signed between the club and Acumen College's Mystic Arts Research Society. You can see that the club was renovated 4 years ago in accordance with the design requirements of the society. At the same time, This club is also a big financial backer of the club. The funds listed in the public accounts are more than 7 figures every year, and it's even more unclear in private. The elevator had already reached the 16th floor. Unlike Cat Eyes, this group of people was too big of a target. The waiter came over early to inquire about them. Hiyuan ignored him and directly asked Luo Nan, "Mr. Luo?" Luo Nan raised his head and looked at this strange and indistinct clubhouse space. The basic characteristic of the coating on the outer wall was that it was made up of peculiar tree vines and decorative designs that encircled the mysterious circular structure of a magical array. The dim, dark red streams of light were like solvents entering tubes in a laboratory. They passed through the vines and patterns on the wall and traveled among the seemingly independent magic circles. Luo Nan looked for quite a while before speaking in a low voice. "The lighting effects here are quite interesting." The waiter clearly saw who was standing in the middle of the crowd and immediately revealed a standard smile. "The style of our clubhouse was planned and designed by a professional mysticism team in order to bring our customers a brand new and special experience." Luo Nan interrupted the waiter's cliché. "Prepare a private room for us. Also, are the members of the Mystic Society still in 1613? Luo Nan was referring to the room that Cat Eyes had locked onto. The waiter nodded and Luo Nan headed over there. Hiyuan ordered the 3 bodyguards to wait in the private room first. Zhang Yingying had the waiter prepare a fruit platter and red wine. She had the appearance of meeting a guest before having fun. At the same time, Hiyuan issued an order on the psychic wave network, Octopus. Hallucinogen. Several seconds later, a young man wearing a funny cartoon t-shirt and a jacket came out from a nearby restroom. He greeted Cat Eyes, who was waiting outside 1613, and directly pushed open the door to enter. Cat Eyes grabbed the young drunkard next to her and entered the private room right behind him. The overall structure of 1613 was an extremely standard circular shape. The dazzling projection equipment in the center was designed in the form of a very peculiar lampstand. Right now, it ignited with an ambiguous pink glow, smearing the dusky room into an even more chaotic mess. There were no sofas, chairs, or the like in the private room. There were only a few soft cushions. Everyone was casually sitting on the ground. There were 20 to 30 people playing and accompanying. But right now, these people were already under the dual effects of their own drugs and Octopus's hallucinogen. Their consciousness was in chaos. They were either men and women hugging each other or laughing and crying. They were completely unaware of the changes in the outside world. Even Octopus did not expect this excessively intense result. He was currently adjusting the composition of the drug in a flurry to avoid creating a group of idiots. Cat Eyes rolled her eyes at him and casually tossed the drunkard to the ground. "Hurry up. We're already outside." A knock rang out from the door as they spoke. The waiter was the first to walk in. He saw this scene, but he didn't seem surprised at all. He very naturally spoke to Octopus, who was standing there in a clear-headed state. "A guest has come to visit." Luo Nan and his group walked in as they spoke. But Octopus didn't care about the drug. He had a pleasantly surprised appearance of seeing an old friend. He laughed heartily as he walked forward and gave Luo Nan an extremely forceful hug. His clumsy and pale acting made Hiyuan frown. However, the waiter really didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. He turned around and left after Zhang Yingying took the fruit platter and red wine. The scene of a dove occupying a magpie's nest was completed. Luo Nan coughed as he pushed Octopus away. He also stopped his passionate patting. He looked around the room and saw the chaotic situation. For a time, he didn't know what to say. Zhang Yingying casually picked up a piece of fruit and sent it into her mouth to taste. She said vaguely, "Are you disappointed? It looks like you were nearly one of them." Luo Nan responded casually, "It looks like there are quite a few places where I can be of use. I don't have to worry about not having a spot in the future." Luo Nan no longer paid attention to Zhang Yingying. He turned to Octopus with a smile. "Bro Octopus, your drug concoction is quite beautiful. Please give me some pointers in the future." Octopus was baffled. He could only laugh. Well said, well said." Cat Eyes shot him a cold glance and directly fired a map cannon, a bunch of trash. This group of people turned from guest to host. They greeted and chatted within the room, but Hiyuan didn't forget the most important matter from beginning to end. She looked all around at the decorations of the room and the decorations on the walls. Her brows furrowed tighter and tighter. She stepped over the bodies lying on the ground and walked to the center of the projection equipment. She carefully observed the extremely medieval style of the lampstand. Luonan didn't bother with Zhang Yingying and the others right now. He continued to observe and sense, but his attention was placed on the rather gorgeous pattern of the floor. Under the cover of the bodies, the pattern seemed to be broken and continuous. It passed through the transfer of many geometric figures to converge towards the central region. Finally, Luonan's gaze also cast towards the lampstand. He just so happened to collide with Hiyuan's gaze. "Mr. Luo?" Luonan nodded towards her. The human-faced arachnid should have appeared here before. If no one guides them in time, many of them will start to become arrogant and consider themselves to be new human beings or children of God. They think that they are at the peak of mankind and can do whatever they want. That's what happens in many novels and comics, right? Hee hee, it's useless. This is the reality. Of course, most of these idiots would be taught a lesson by the police. If you can't even beat the exoskeleton armors, then don't brag about being a child of God or a holy infant. For those who are more troublesome, the burners of the military will meet them. After that, the association will communicate with them and welcome them into the organization to correct their worldview. Zhang Yingying spread her hands, but in the end, there are still some very special fellows. They should be considered the gifted among the gifted. They are indeed extremely powerful. Even within the society, I'm afraid they are the most top-notch. It's not easy to communicate with them. They don't agree with the society's definition of the ability system. Instead, they have another kind of explanation. But their explanations often use their own abilities to forcefully apply myths, religions, mystic arts, and other existing theories. Or they go wild with their imaginations and change their appearances. The final result is establishing sects and religions. There are many secret sections. These people want to put their exotic theories into practice in the world. They want to verify the holes in their imaginations. That's how they establish themselves. The problem is that they themselves are very powerful, but their related theories are very preposterous. If you cultivate according to their theories, most people will die very miserably. But there's no other way. Magical powers are more awesome than 10,000 sentences of truth. There are still large batches of people who join these sections. They offer their everything and are extremely devout. The government has a huge headache over these things. Of course, the society has a huge headache as well. Luonan heard the hidden meaning in her words. In other words, the society can't do anything about them. It's holding back for fear of hurting the innocent. The leaders of these sects are brainless, but their strength is really very strong. Plus, these sects are deeply rooted in the cities. With the current population density, it would be better to just drop a nuclear bomb in the center of the city if they really were to turn hostile. Don't doubt me. Think about the human-faced arachnid. There's also the R&D district. Luonan was speechless for a time. He was a bit spellbound. Could those powerful ability users really possess the terrifying destructive power of a nuclear bomb? He was stimulated by this information. After coming back to his senses, he simply poured out the series of questions he had been suppressing at the bottom of his heart. Then, how does the society define the ability system? In the end, what counts as an awakened? And what level am I at right now? Zhang Yingying's mouth and tongue were already parched from explaining the secret order. She was busy eating fruits to replenish herself. She waved her hand when she heard Luonan's words, speaking vaguely, "You already have the hexa ear. Go take a look for yourself." I believe that Mr. Luo has already reached a certain level. He has even surpassed the level of a normal awakened. However, he is severely biased towards a certain field. He Yueyin suddenly joined this topic and gave a relatively clear judgment. Zhang Ying went, hey, and cried out, let's not talk about this for now. How's the matter with the order? Luo Nen wanted to slap her. In the end, He Yueyin was a bit more concerned about proper business. She responded, I've already notified the society. We'll be retreating for now. No way? What a strong start and a weak finish. Octopus, who was hurrying to adjust his medicine, raised his head. We're disbanding just like this? Actually, a certain order leader has already protested against the society's actions. We've interrupted their holy ritual. Octopus was shocked. We've been discovered? Luo Nan was quite baffled. How were we discovered? Cat eyes glared at him for no reason at all. So you're blaming me? Zhang Yingying's attention was focused elsewhere. Holy ritual? She simply tossed away the fruit platter, spread her hands, and laughed out loud. She didn't know who was the one who said things like, fear of harming the innocent, just now. He Yueyin responded in the calmest manner towards the different reactions of the people in the room. There's no reasoning to speak with those order leaders. And the methods of the secret order really do exceed common sense. In any case, we're dealing with the human-faced arachnid, not the secret order. This operation is halted and we're retreating. I will compile all matters into a brief and submit it to the society. It will be sent to everyone's hands. The speech this time was conducted through the psychic wave network. Immediately, the encrypted channel was filled with sighs and strange cries. Zhang Yingying raised her eyebrows. This order leader has jumped quite high. Are you sure they aren't colluding with the human-faced arachnid or something? What's their name? Show us. He Yueyin didn't say anything. She just tilted her head and indicated for Zhang Yingying to look at the center of the room. There was a projection device in the shape of a lampstand. It was unknown when, but the burning pink glow of the lampstand had already disappeared. Instead, a new image appeared on the two sides of the edge. There were two sets of thin chains hanging down, each pulling a flat plate. One plate was black and the other was white. They were symmetrical and hung motionless in the air, forming the classic form of a scale. At this moment, Zhang Yingying grinned. She wanted to say something, but she didn't open her mouth in the end. Instead, Octopus let out a low cry. Chapter 80. Luo Nan looked at the group of people who were either shocked or had serious expressions. This time, Luo Nan didn't ask any more questions. He directly searched the hexaear for an answer. Through a mental search, the standard answer quickly jumped out. The Order of Justice was one of the 3 world-level secret orders. It was also the only secret order known to the world that worshipped a holy object. It didn't have a clear inclination towards worshipping a personified god. The highest leader of the order was called the First Ablatum. The holy object of the order was called the Scales of Truth. Its basic teachings were extremely vague. There were only a few words: the fairness of the world, the justice of truth. Within the order, they were passionate about sacrificial rituals. They were known to use a fair exchange to realize the balance of the world. Truthfully speaking, Luo Nen didn't understand half of it even though he had seen some introductions. There were some conceptual things that needed to be understood individually. At this time, He Yueyin officially issued the order to retreat. After coming out of the private room, the temporary team had disbanded. He Yueyin was still extremely strict. She informed every member that they shouldn't linger near Sky Capital Water Village until the society came up with a new opinion. It was best not to act alone. Although the human-faced arachnid had been heavily injured by her format of fire and it might not be able to launch its next wave of attacks in a short amount of time, ability users who were alone were clearly the best tonic for it. Oh my, I'm in such a sorry state. Bamboo Pole let out a sigh and said, "Good night, everyone," before logging off. The other avatars in the encrypted communications channel disappeared one after the other. Luo Nan took the initiative to call out to Octopus. He added this drug concoction expert as a friend, ready to ask for help at any time. At the same time, he sent a request to Cragburst and Cat Eyes. Cragburst was very straightforward and responded very quickly. But Cat Eyes snorted coldly and just left. Luonan shrugged. He could feel that Cat Eye's attitude towards him had become increasingly vile after they completed the psychic drawing together. Hey, be careful. Cat Eyes holds a lot of grudges. Octopus had a pretty good impression of Luonan. He patted Luonan on the shoulder and left with Cragburst. Luonan felt quite innocent. What did he do to Cat Eyes? The initial backlash was caused by Cat Eyes using her ability to spy on his psychic process, summoning the heavily chained crow to counterattack. Or could it be said that the psychic senses of an awakened made her feel that a piece of her information had been dug out? You must have been too rough. Zhang Yingying giggled as she patted his back. Don't be fooled by Cat Eyes' flirtatious appearance. In fact, I've never seen her have a boyfriend since she joined the guild. Maybe she's a reserved old virgin? Was this a joke a woman should make? Luonan was disinclined to pay attention. It was He Yueyin who turned around and unexpectedly joined the conversation. Mr. Luo, regarding the matter of Cat Eyes, your previous etiquette was a bit inappropriate. In the process of creating the psychic diagram, Mr. Luo should have probed and used Cat Eye's memories and subconscious. In a certain sense, this constitutes an infringement on her free will. Of course, Mr. Luo must have done it unintentionally, but it would be better to apologize afterwards. Luonan went, a bit embarrassed. He Yueyin continued to supplement his general knowledge in this area. As a spiritually strengthened ability user and psychic, Sir Luo will definitely encounter similar problems in the future. However, you just need to remember one thing. Ability users are extremely sensitive to free will, so prior communication and subsequent explanations are extremely necessary. Naturally, Luonan humbly accepted the teachings. At this moment, he thought of the evaluation that was interrupted by Zhang Yingying. It seemed that if he didn't clarify the situation now, he wouldn't have a chance today. Sister He, you said I'm seriously biased. He Yueyin also thought of this matter. After a moment of silence, she said, if I were to evaluate Mr. Luo's ability on the mental plane, I would look at it from the effects of dealing with the human-faced arachnid. I will give you a C+, or even a B-. However, your body can only be an F, nothing more. Zhang Yingying laughed and said, it can't be any less. Any less and I'll be a cripple. The corner of Luonan's mouth twitched. His body shouldn't be at this level. He had been training for many years. His toughness and agility should be above average. He Yueyin coldly shot a glance at Zhang Yingying and solemnly said, the consequences of a serious imbalance between the mind and the body are 100 times more serious than being crippled. Be it the military or quantum holdings, there were countless bloody examples. The reason why I'm doing this is that I hope Mr. Luo can take this seriously. Zhang Yingying was unable to continue laughing. Luonan was also speechless. Since Mr. Luo mentioned the format before, let's talk about the format. I can understand the meaning of the format that Mr. Luo spoke of. It's different from the archetype format that I'm used to. It should pay more attention to individual characteristics. Is this right? Luonan thought for a moment and reluctantly nodded his head. He Yueyin focused her gaze on Luonan. If you view the format as a type of building, artists can erect skyscrapers with toothpicks. Designers can complete a complete set of blueprints on the computer. But those are just models. They are just data. Truly practical buildings must be constructed using qualified and durable building materials. After all, the first essence of a building is practicality. If it's as Mr. Luo says, you possess an effective format. Then please choose the most suitable building materials for you and complete this building in a solid manner. This involves a complete transformation of your body's composition and mental willpower. It's absolutely not just visualization on the mental plane. If it's just data, then it's a bit better. But if it's an exquisite yet fragile piece of toothpick art that exists in the real world, it would collapse with a single breath. It would be meaningless. A toothpick-type man. Zhang Yingying clapped her hands in laughter. She didn't mind sprinkling salt on Luonan's wounds in the slightest. Who knew that He Yueyin would change her target in the next moment? Miss Zhang. I know that you don't have any ill intentions towards Mr. Luo. But for a newcomer like him, your habitual jokes or exaggerated expressions are very easy to mislead. Just like with regards to the issue of secret orders, even though I don't like the way secret orders do things, I know that every secret order on record has a leader with an ability value of it. In the society's 3 levels of ability system, awakened, engineer, and extraordinary, they are at the top. They are powerhouses that stand at the peak of the world, and they also possess outstanding intelligence. They are absolutely not the powerful madmen that you speak of. You have a plan in mind, but it's very easy for you to cause Mr. Luo to misunderstand and form a wrong impression. For a psychic, this kind of wrong impression is very likely to be fatal. Zhang Yingying choked for a moment. Soon her eyebrows jumped up. She had made a mistake in her previous actions and received He Yuan's criticism. She had nothing to say. But right now, even her usual way of doing things had been reprimanded to the point of being useless. He Yuan, you really think too highly of yourself. Luo Nen felt that the atmosphere between the two was extremely tense, but it was all related to him. He felt a bit awkward for a time. Right when he was thinking about how to mediate, his wristband vibrated. Luo Nan's eyelids jumped when he saw the number. He rushed to connect. Andy. Chapter 81. I'm still upstairs. Luo Nan was unable to mediate the conflict between the two ladies. He took 2 steps forward and responded in a low voice. There was no doubt that his aunt was waiting somewhere nearby, waiting for the cold dinner to end. Luo Nan didn't feel the slightest bit surprised at this sort of stalking behavior. His aunt had this sort of temperament. She was determined to bring him home tonight. She wouldn't give Luo Nan any reason to refuse. If it were a few days ago, Luo Nan would have done everything possible to escape his aunt's evil clutches. But right now, his drug production was in a state of shortage. There was nothing to do even if he returned to Blue Bay Community. His thoughts of refusing weren't that firm. Luo Nan resisted a few more times, but in the end he threw in the towel and admitted defeat. I'm with a friend right now. I'll be down soon. Where are you, aunt? I'll come find you in a bit. Admitting defeat to his aunt wasn't a big deal, but Luo Nan still had some reservations. The effects of the withdrawal reaction couldn't be ignored. Suddenly cutting off the drug supply could very well lead to some abnormal changes in his nervous system. His formatting had just shown results. What should he do if it regressed because of this? Luo Nan looked at the friend list on the Hexaear and gained a bit of confidence. It seemed that he really did have an additional channel of choice after joining the society. Luo Nan first dealt with his aunt with grunts and then turned to ask Zhang Yingying. Octopus Bro is very good at making drugs. Does he sell them to the outside world? Zhang Yingying blurted out. Who are you harboring evil intentions towards? There was no way to communicate. Sister He, you just have to display your invincible might and correct her 3 distorted views. Luo Nan rolled his eyes. He felt that it was more appropriate to directly communicate with Octopus Bro. But Zhang Yingying wasn't happy, probably because his expression was too obvious. She wrapped her arms around his neck. Hey, speak clearly. What the hell do you want? 9.5 out of 10 people who do business with Octopus Bro aren't good people. Oh, wait a minute. Zhang Yingying suddenly reached out and pulled at his face. Of course, Luo Nan wouldn't let her move, but this woman's strength far exceeded his by who knows how many levels. He was simply unable to resist. How many times had this happened? Luo Nan's face was flushed red. He was unable to suppress his anger. He Yuan frowned and wanted to stop her, but Zhang Yingying looked as if she had let go of all past grievances. She called out to her, Come, let's take a look. I've always felt that the color of this kid's pupils was abnormal, as if he had taken too many drugs. Tell me, do you usually have this kind of bad habit? Why was he suddenly so sharp? Luo Nan was shocked. He forgot to struggle, and Zhang Yingying forced his eyelids open. However, what could she see under the dim lighting of the clubhouse? He Yuan pulled Zhang Yingying's arm and said in a low voice, Stop fooling around. We haven't left the church's territory yet. Luo Nen finally broke free from Zhang Yingying's grip, but he still clenched his teeth in depression. What was up with this woman's monstrous strength? In the eyes of an awakened, was his body so weak that it was close to being crippled? He secretly swore that he would communicate with Zhang Yingying again after he achieved the balance of his body and mind and truly became an awakened. In any case, after He Yuan's interruption, Zhang Yingying didn't pursue the matter of him taking drugs. Luonen didn't want to stay with Zhang Yingying for a while. He wanted to leave, but he remembered that Shui Lei and Chen Xiaolin were still on the 81st floor. He had to go take a look at the situation. Luonen arrived at the floor without incident. He had just opened the elevator door when chaotic sounds came from the corridor. Luonen didn't care at first, but after a few steps, he saw figures scattered in front of him. There were waiters, medical staff, He Yuan's bodyguards, and so on. They were conversing outside the door. Shui Lei, who was supposed to be lying in the room, had his head lowered as he leaned against the wall. He looked very dejected. Luonen had a good impression of this student who had a straightforward personality and high martial strength. After fighting side by side, the feeling was different. He immediately walked over and asked probingly, "Lei, are you okay?" Shui Lei raised his head when he heard the voice. His eyes lit up when he saw Luonan. "Nanster, are you okay?" "Just now." Sighed. Shui Lei didn't know where to begin with a multitude of things. In the end, he could only wave his hand, unable to continue. "What happened?" He Yuan asked the bodyguard in charge of taking care of the patients. The bodyguard had a bitter smile on his face as he explained the situation that had occurred. Of the 3 patients, Shui Lei had only been knocked unconscious by He Yuan. He didn't have any injuries, so he woke up the earliest. He was easy to talk to and was easily pacified. Then he went to take care of his unconscious girlfriend until the doctor He Yuan invited arrived. Black Wolf's spine was fractured, so he was carried away for surgery early on. Chen Xiaolin was treated on the spot. Chen Xiaolin was fine when she didn't wake up. But when she woke up and saw Shui Lei, her emotions were agitated. She was afraid. She was angry. She was sad. She chased Shui Lei out of the room. She even alarmed the waiters on the floor. She lost control of her emotions? Luo Nan immediately thought of the human-faced arachnid. Clearly, He Yuan was thinking the same thing. The two looked at each other and headed into the room. He Yuan blocked him and Zhang Yingying took his place. The smile on this girl's face was much fainter. Her body had a clear and sharp aura. She was clearly ready to go. But after entering the room, Luo Nan's eyes were filled with nothing abnormal. Chen Xiaolin was in deep sleep on the bed. Aside from being weak, there were no traces of the human-faced arachnid. The 3 people exchanged glances. They were all a bit stunned. The doctor was very dissatisfied with the 3 people who suddenly squeezed in. The patient has just been injected with a tranquilizer. She needs to rest. All unrelated people leave. He Yuan confirmed with Luo Nan that the human-faced arachnid really didn't exist. Then she indicated to Luo Nan and Zhang Yingying to leave first. She stayed behind to talk with the doctor. He Yuan walked out of the room after a few minutes. Luo Nan asked her, "What's going on?" "Symptoms of stress. It's hard to understand facts that surpass one's common sense. Refusal to come into contact with facts, severe rejection, or selective forgetfulness. The members of the society often encounter these kinds of things." Zhang Yingying shrugged. "I've long since suggested that the scope of common sense of ordinary people should be expanded in time to let them get used to accepting the existence of ability users. Humph. Mutants, those unscientific things, have been wreaking havoc for decades. Many people are still burying their heads in the sand." Luo Nan understood. So it turned out that Chen Xiaolin was unable to accept the sudden life and death battle between Shui Lei and the Black Wolf. Then there was the human-faced arachnid. And even the influence of Luo Nan's hypnosis technique. He Yuan suggested, "It's better to let your friend go home first. He'll only make the patient more nervous if he stays by her side." Zhang Yingying shot a glance at the still dejected Shui Lei. "This friend of yours is quite the material. His foundation is much better than yours. His adaptability is also quite strong. He should be the disciple of some martial arts master. Luo Nen approved of this conjecture. Shui Lei's reaction in the elevator was truly admirable. He even suspected that this big guy should have an intuitionistic response to the threat of the human-faced arachnid. However, Zhang Yinging was serious for less than 10 seconds before she began to run her mouth again. This pair is clearly bragging. Why don't I introduce your friend to the society? You can go to the society and find your own kind. This kind of sunny and strong man is definitely more popular than some toothpick guy. Luo Nan glared at her and asked He Yueyin about Chen Xiaolin's treatment situation. Then he walked towards Shui Lei. Senior Sister Chen doesn't have any problems. The doctor will take good care of her. We can't help much here anyway. Let's go home first. Shui Lei shook his head as expected. I'll wait here. Luo Nan pressed down on his arm. Senior Sister Chen will be sent to the hospital to receive follow-up treatment. She just needs to be quiet for a few days in this kind of situation. She also needs to be quiet for a bit. Let's go. It's getting late. My aunt's car is downstairs. She'll give you a ride. Shui Lei clearly hung his head even lower when he said the word, quiet. Luo Nan sighed and used a bit of strength to pull Shui Lei up. Of course, Shui Lei's mind was definitely shaken right now. Otherwise, how could he move? Luo Nan and Shui Lei left side by side after greeting He Yueyin, Zhang Yinging, and the others. They entered the elevator, and it just so happened to be the one where Shui Lei and He Lang had fought. Shui Lei stared blankly at the remnants of the collision marks on the inner walls of the elevator. He suddenly spoke. You guys aren't normal people, right? You're not either. It's fate. Chapter 82. Luo Nan's consciousness was like a pearl that had sunk into the cold depths of the sea. It was like a lonely star that hung in the dark void. Sometimes it sank into darkness, and sometimes it shone brightly. In the end, pure light and darkness determined their respective domains. All sorts of silhouettes and lines began to appear at the boundary between light and darkness. Pillows, bedside cabinets, table lamps, desk. From near to far, layer after layer expanded outwards. The simple concept and the familiar way of combining them formed a clearer meaning. Luo Nen made a judgment. He was in his own room, but he wasn't in the apartment in Blue Bay Community. Instead, he was on the east side of the second floor of his aunt's house. He had lived there for 5 years. Even more thoughts poured into his mind. Gear, human-faced arachnid, explorer's society. He Yueyin, Zhang Yinging, Xie Junpe. All sorts of images and clues interweave to form a complete chain of cognition. Luo Nen finally found the node before he lost consciousness. The operation at Limestone Water Village pub had stopped. He sent Shui Lei home. Then he seemed to have fallen asleep in his aunt's car. Then what time was it? Just as this thought stirred, the wristband on his wrist, the table lamp clock on the bedside cabinet, and the flexible e-ink screen within the notebook all lit up at the same time. 2:27 in the morning. Luo Nan suddenly opened his eyes and sat up. But then his waist, thighs, and calves transmitted a feeling of tightness and soreness. His calves were as hard as iron and stone. They were cramping. Luo Nan sucked in a breath of cold air. He crossed his legs and kneaded them. It took a long time for him to recover. But his fingers and toes felt swollen and numb. His blood and energy were stagnant and blocked. His stomach and intestines were convulsing, making his throat feel a bit nauseous. This was, without a doubt, a withdrawal reaction. Such a situation was within Luo Nan's expectations. He composed himself and did his best to ignore it. The AI system sensed his continuous movements and confirmed that the owner of the room had woken up. The system had no intention of going back to sleep and automatically turned on the wall lights. Luo Nan turned his head to look all around. Various furnishings appeared in his field of vision. They were exactly the same as what he had sensed on the mental plane. Of course, the most important thing was that the current time was 2:29 p.m. Luo Nan's mental senses were clearly accurate without error when he was tormented by his drug withdrawal reaction. Luo Nan closed his eyes once more, clearing his distracting thoughts. Sure enough, A clear picture appeared in his mind. The range wasn't very far. When it passed through the room and reached the corridor, it became dark and indistinct. It had already reached its limit. Calculating, it was about a 5-meter radius. Compared to Cat Eye's long-range perception, it was nothing at all. But it must be known that Luo Nan could only use the heavily chained crow or use the out-of-body state in order to accomplish this. But now it was natural. It seemed like his body and spirit were also constantly adapting to this ability, integrating it into the most natural level. All right, he was no longer an ordinary person anymore. Luo Nan was just about to test out his new ability when a bloated figure tiptoed through the hallway at this time, entering the range of his senses. Luo Nan shook his head. He resisted the uncomfortable feeling of soreness throughout his body, got off the bed, walked to the door and opened it. Hiss! The person passing by his door was so startled that her hair was about to float up. But soon, she was able to clearly see who it was under the light of Luo Nan's room. She handed over the enormous suitcase in her hands without the slightest trace of politeness. Help! Just by looking at the size of the suitcase, Luo Nan felt that his next cramp wasn't too far away. But he didn't say anything. He silently received the suitcase and then, under the guidance of the figure, he moved the suitcase downstairs as quietly as possible. Emoya got rid of the biggest burden and only carried a guitar case. She recovered her usual free and easy handsomeness. She lightly brushed away the messy hair on her forehead and didn't forget to issue orders. Be gentle. Don't turn on the lights when you're downstairs. They moved the suitcase to the living room with great difficulty and refused the AI housekeeper's suggestion to turn on the lights. The two cousins sat on the sofa, panting. Emoya was Luo Nan's older cousin. She had an explosive figure, but she was used to wearing gender-neutral clothing. She was fortunate enough to inherit her father's handsome appearance. She wasn't like her mother, who had an average appearance. She had undergone a genetic mutation, growing to a height of 1.8 meters. She was currently the tallest person in the family. Right now, she was dressed in cowboy attire. Her legs were crossed, but her top leg was crossed over her knee, forming a smooth and proper large triangle. Her skin-tight jeans wrapped around her, revealing the fine and powerful lines of her body. It was enough to make over 70% of the girls scream and call her handsomeness. They would fall to the ground crying from jealousy. Luo Nan really was paralyzed on the sofa. Even moving a finger made him feel tired. I've returned the favor, Emoya frowned as she looked at him. You're too weak. You didn't just rely on eating pills to survive this month, right? How could that be? The amount of food I eat in a day is more like what you eat in a month. Then you slept for an entire day. How are you still this week? I slept at around 10 o'clock yesterday. Yesterday? It was the night before yesterday, okay? You slept like a dead pig in the car. It was me and Mo Peng who painstakingly carried you upstairs. Then I never saw you wake up again. Your biological mother even called a doctor. Luo Nan raised his hand to look at the date displayed on his wristband, September 30th. He was speechless for a time. Luo Nan reckoned that it was due to his drug withdrawal reaction and the fact that he had been working day and night for the past 2 days. He didn't want to be entangled with this problem. He changed the subject. Why did you run away in the middle of the night? Emoya snorted. Who ran away? I just went to Man City for a roadshow. It took a bit longer, that's all. Man City was a satellite town of Xia City. It was over 400 kilometers away from the city. It was already close to the edge of the city in the wilderness. Luo Nan frowned when he heard this. How many days? A month. I have to participate in a music festival. My aunt will kill you. She'll be bored by the time I get back. Emoya snorted disdainfully at this sort of threat. Moreover, it wasn't that easy for Luo Nan to change the topic. Hey, you suddenly came home. Did they give up? Clearly, Emoya was talking about the matter of making medicine. She was the only one in the entire family who roughly knew what Luo Nan had been up to these past few years. Luo Nan thought for a bit and laughed. No, I'm resting in stages. It's good that you know what to do. Emoya stood up and walked over to rub Luo Nan's head. Excellent. The little fellow is much calmer now. But don't pretend anymore. The car is here to pick me up. Get up and move the luggage for the future heavenly queen. Luo Nan groaned, but in the end he couldn't resist Mo Ya's forcefulness. He lifted the luggage once more and moved it outside like a thief. He walked out the front door of the house and saw a jet-black old-fashioned van parked outside the courtyard. There were also people waving. Though the sky was dark, Luo Nan was able to confirm that they were members of Mo Ya's band. This group of people, with great difficulty, Luo Nan stuffed the enormous luggage into the van that was already filled with musical instruments and people. Mo Ya could probably only sit on her own luggage. But Mo Ya didn't mind this at all. She gave Luo Nan a hug very straightforwardly. Do your best, bro. You can do it. Do your best too. Great heavenly queen. The old-fashioned van's lights turned on and it gradually drove out of the community. Luo Nan sent Mo Ya off with his gaze, continuing to work hard for her dream. Chapter 83. Luo Nan had become a porter. His back was sore and his limbs were weak. His cramped calf showed signs of relapse. Under these circumstances, he was too lazy to even go up to the second floor. He walked to the living room and collapsed on the sofa. He didn't want to move at all. His body was half crippled, but his heart was inexplicably happy. He chuckled as he lay on the sofa. Luo Nan also saw himself when he saw Mo Ya like this. It sounded a bit painful, but to have a dream and to be on the path of pursuing it was something worth cherishing. Mo Ya's dream was to create a world-class band and to become the fully deserving lead singer of the Queen of Heaven. Up until now, her band had already gained a bit of fame in Xia City. They had also held 2 small-scale concerts and had begun to attract the attention of music companies. Perhaps she was still far from her ultimate goal, but when she sat in that crowded little box of goods and drove towards the music festival in Mantown, she was advancing on the road towards her dream of becoming a heavenly queen. Luo Nan had once been very envious of Mo Ya. They were both chasing after their dreams, but he spent 5 years of time without seeing any substantial progress. Luo Nan's dream was to let his grandfather's formatting theory defeat Yen Hong, that shameless distorter and plagiarist. He wanted it to be accepted by the world, become a prominent study, and restore the honor it deserved. This wasn't easy. Yen Hong had already fallen, but Quantum Corporation, one of the top 3 companies in the world by market value, possessed the results. They used this foundation to develop the Deep Blue platform, created the burners, and changed the entire world. This supergiant was a nearly insurmountable obstacle that lay across the road ahead. If Luo Nan wanted to break through it head-on, he would need to become the apex scholar, possess the apex academic status, and have the support of the corresponding capital power. He would need to continuously produce superior results. With his age and accumulation, was this a goal that could be achieved within a few decades? Plus, Luo Nan wasn't a gifted researcher. He had stumbled with even the most basic replication experiments in the past 5 years. His accumulation of theory was pitifully small. He used himself as a guinea pig. It looked very decisive, but so what if he succeeded? At most, he would be a large lone piece of evidence that wouldn't be recognized. At most, some organizations would be interested in him, mulling over slicing him up for research. Luo Nan knew of insurmountable obstacles, but he rarely thought about them. Thinking too much would cause him to collapse. At that time, he felt like he was wandering at the intersection of a highway. Staring at the traffic, he felt envious, but he couldn't blend in at all. Mo Ya and the others still had a container truck, but what he had was just a small body sculpted from medicine. He didn't even have the qualifications to go on the road. But now, the situation had taken a miraculous turn. Luo Nan's consciousness focused on his left ear. There was a small and exquisite electronic device stuck to his ear canal. The hexa-ear. This little thing from the Wilderness Explorers Association had a miraculous function, but only those with a certain level of strength could activate it. Moreover, depending on one's strength, the level of the function would be different. Luo Nan needed to activate the heavily chained crow the moment he first came into contact with it. Only then was he able to realize the functions on the computer level. But after 30 hours of sleep, his body and mind had inexplicably adapted to the relevant abilities. At this moment, he only needed to slightly concentrate his mind, and he had already triggered the function of the hexaear and successfully connected to the psychic wave network. The interface of his retina opened, and he entered the homepage that seemed to be in the wilderness. Luo Nan wasn't unfamiliar with these kinds of changes. Back when he constructed the container format, he obtained the two abilities of Glutton King and Hypnotist. At first, he needed a high degree of concentration to be able to activate them. But not long after, the activation of these two abilities became natural. He didn't need to make any deliberate movements at all. They completely merged into his flesh and blood genes. Yes, it seemed that he had transformed his active skills into passive skills. He carried a halo with him, and he practically didn't need to consume any mana. Of course, concentration and energy were still indispensable in order to activate the deeper applications. This point was quite interesting, but it wasn't the main focus of Luo Nan's attention right now. He immediately received a notification when he logged onto the Society's homepage. Among them were messages from He Yueyin and Zhang Yingyi. There were also 2 emails from the Society's channels. Zhang Yingying's message looked like it was purely to chat with him. She stopped after discovering that he hadn't come online all this time. He Yueyin told him to reply as soon as he got online. She reminded him to receive the briefing from the Society's channels. Inside was an evaluation of the operation at the Limestone Water Village pub on the night of the 28th. Luo Nan looked at the time. It was the middle of the night. How could he disturb someone's sweet dreams at this time? He wasn't in a hurry to contact He Yueyin. Instead, he first checked the 2 emails from the Society. One of them was an official confirmation letter welcoming him into the professional society. The other was the briefing that He Yueyin had brought up. He first opened the confirmation letter. There were stylized words inside. It was an expression of welcome for Luo Nan to join the Wilderness Explorers Society. The contents were probably the same for every new member of the society. The only difference was the basic personal information feedback forms submitted at the time of registration. Some items required the society to confirm and adjust them. After adjusting, the form would be sent back to the new member for further confirmation. Luo Nan was disinclined to pay attention to the other items. He just stared at the ability source section. Right now it displayed System Flow. Luo Nan subconsciously shook his arm. But then he discovered that there was a special asterisk marking behind this item. When he shifted his consciousness over, a piece of information appeared. This item is currently in doubt. It is recommended that the new member contact the Society's cultivation department to undergo the relevant cultivation system evaluation and registration work. If the conditions are met, the new member can obtain the qualifications to teach. Luo Nan raised his eyebrows. The word "in doubt" made him a bit unhappy. But he had to admit that compared to the difficult circumstances of the past 5 years, the current him, "I'm on my way." This was an organization that borrowed the name of the Wilderness Explorers Society. In reality, it was an ability user professional society. It was just like its core. What it valued was ability and effectiveness. Just like Luo Nan's identity as a psychic and the corresponding treatment. As long as he used irrefutable facts to prove his worth, he would naturally become the core of the society's tactics. He would also easily erase the doubts of those arrogant and unruly fellows. After all, in the domain of ability users, the strong and the weak, the high and the low were all placed on the surface. They were direct and straightforward. Academics? Status? Capital? At least Luo Nan had yet to see the influence of these factors up until now. And these were the most difficult obstacles for him to overcome. In this way, he just needed to use reality to prove himself. Chapter 84. Luo Nan used the psychic wave network to search for information related to the evaluation of the cultivation system. He saw the association's definition of a cultivation system. It was a complete and operational cultivation sequence from beginner to advanced. It ensured that a certain number of ordinary people could pass through this cultivation sequence to become an awakened, or even an ability user of a higher level. Luo Nan's focus was on the awakened. It seemed that the most basic condition to confirm a system was that someone could pass through the system to become an awakened. Then he was still a bit lacking, and frankly speaking, he didn't have a particularly clear train of thought on how to become an awakened. From this point of view, it was no wonder that Zhang Yingying was so disdainful of his insistence on the system-type judgment. Of course, Luo Nan didn't believe that this was a flaw in his grandfather's theory. The theory he grasped, including the related methods, were all obtained from a notebook. His grandfather had made thousands of similar notebooks throughout his life. Moreover, there were even more important research results that were stored in the Wilderness Laboratory. The Wilderness Laboratory changed owners during the time of the lawsuit. Most of the relevant notes were lost. The book that Luo Nan grasped was not worth mentioning in the face of the huge amount of research data. But the reason why Yen Hong was able to grasp the relevant theory and produce results so quickly was because he had obtained a considerable portion of the important data. As for why Yen Hong was able to obtain the data, Luo Nan knew that it was because of his own father, that coward. During the most critical stage of his grandfather's lawsuit, that coward took out his grandfather's research results without authorization. He reached a sort of settlement with Yen Hong and the team behind him, exchanging for a light sentence for his grandfather and successfully getting rid of the lawsuit on his own body. But in reality, his grandfather's schizophrenia was already extremely serious. It was impossible for the court to make a particularly harsh sentence. In the end, that coward was only trying to get rid of his own crime. This was a betrayal. Luo Nan firmly believed. Not only did he betray his grandfather, he betrayed his mother who had always supported their research and died because of it. Luo Nan's heart felt stuffy every time he thought of this. He had such a great grandfather, such a great mother, but at the same time, he was the son of a coward and a traitor. Luo Nan took a deep breath. His previous good mood was completely destroyed by the sudden memories. He tried to look at some more information about the society, but he was unable to calm his mind. Seeing that it was still early, Luo Nan decided to go out and train. Speaking of which, it had been 2 days since he had completed a marathon. It looked pretty good, He Yuan reminded him at this time. Honor points are very useful within the society. I hope that you can use them carefully. Sister He, do you have any suggestions? Luo Nan had a lot of confidence in He Yuan's abilities right now. He directly asked her for guidance. He Yuan said, I've just entered the society. Moreover, the path of a burner is different from yours. I recommend that you understand the society a bit more before making your choice. AB evaluation and 4 points are already quite impressive for a newcomer. You must display your greatest value. Luo Nan naturally received the advice. And the B- evaluation made Luo Nan think of He Yuan's evaluation that night. She also gave Luo Nan AB evaluation on the mental plane. But she only gave him an F on the fleshly body plane. This seemed to be an important obstacle for Luo Nan to become an awakened. Luo Nan couldn't help but ask, what should I do if I want to temper my body and achieve a balance between my mind and body? Do I become an awakened when my fleshly body and mind achieve a balance? I'm still unable to give you too good a suggestion on this point. After all, the military's burners started with alterations. However, I've heard that the society has a training method specifically provided for members of the mentally enhanced. He Yuan was extremely patient. She answered every question. Mr. Luo needs to be clear on this concept. Since it's called awakening, the key is certainly a change in one's understanding. Whether it's training the fleshly body or cultivating the mind, they are just supplementary methods. They help the fleshly body and the mind to truly experience and sense this world. They help to better explain one's strength. The society has a sort of awakening ceremony. It has a similar function. Chapter 85. He Yuan's reply was filled with her straightforward and practical style. Too many people wouldn't like it, but Luo Nan could accept it. Achieving a balance between the fleshly body and the mental, pure and practical goals made it easier to concentrate. But He Yuan sent another message right after. It was a form with the words, Hexayear Emergency Function Training Plan, written on it. Hexayear? Luo Nan was stupefied for a moment before he remembered that He Yuan had mentioned this line that night. Now even the plan was laid out? There's no need. It wasn't just that he was afraid of trouble. After 30 hours of sleep, his adaptability to his new ability gave Luo Nan quite a bit of confidence. He felt that even if he didn't use the heavily chained crow, maintaining a 24-hour connection shouldn't be a problem. He Yuan didn't give in easily. Mr. Luo, the use of the Hexayear isn't just common sense. It is also a skill. Even when you reach the awakened level, you still need to practice it frequently. Especially right now, the threat of the human-faced arachnid is far from being eliminated. You need to maintain a close connection and not give it an opportunity to take advantage. Luo Nan grunted and finally thought of the human-faced arachnid. He seized the opportunity to change topics. Oh right. Is there any news on the human-faced arachnid? How's the situation with the encirclement and suppression? Not too good. He Yuan's attention was drawn away, but he could hear the seriousness in her voice. Up until now, the society, the military, and Quantum Corporation have handled a total of 11 related incidents. 4 cases have been resolved and 7 cases have failed. In addition, there are still 3 cases that haven't been determined to be the work of the human-faced arachnid. Out of the 14 incidents, 5 people died, 1 was seriously injured, and 67 people suffered serious mental trauma. This was simply a complete rout. Luo Nan wanted to cover his forehead when he heard this. Before he joined the society, he had a bit of reverence towards this organization hidden in the dark side of the human world. But now it seemed that they were in dire straits. How could this young man, who harbored dreams of joining, endure? He Yuan seemed to sense Luo Nan's thoughts. She spoke softly. When the Darksider life forms first appeared, the government, the military, and the Ability User Society were in a much more difficult situation than they are now. Later, they paid a considerable price and developed a series of tactics to barely control the situation. The current situation is different. The Darksider life forms invading the metropolis is a problem that we have been trying our best to avoid. But this time, the situation had gone out of control, and their efforts over the past 2 years had been ruined. It will definitely take some time to regain control. Luo Nan blurted out, "Then how will Quantum Corporation be handled?" Nan, what are you talking about?" His aunt's voice suddenly rang out. Then the living room lights turned on, illuminating Luo Nan's silhouette on the sofa. At the top of the stairs, Madame Luo Shuqing frowned and stared at him in her pajamas. "I made a mistake." Luo Nan's application of the Hexayear was indeed lacking in tempering. It was clearly an application on the mental plane, but he forgot himself for a moment and simply vomited. However, he did not know if there was a similar problem in front of him. He Yuan also noticed the surprise on his end and took the initiative to end the call. "Once you confirm the training schedule, send it to me." Luo Nan didn't have the face to refuse at this time. He could only acquiesce. Of course, the most important thing now was to deal with his aunt's questions. He stood up, but he forgot about his body and almost sprained his waist again. He took a deep breath and tried to think of an excuse. "I just woke up and a classmate was online, so we chatted. I really slept for a long time." Madame Luo Shuqing walked over, her brows still furrowed. "Did you not rest well over at Blue Bay?" "Nope, it was pretty good." Luo Nan's eyes didn't even blink when he said this sort of lie. His usual dullness was a very good cover. However, Madame Luo Shuqing was far too familiar with him. "You don't sleep even after midnight. You live by yourself. How can you handle it?" Luo Nan knew that he couldn't continue being entangled. He lowered his head to look for his shoes. "Aunt, it's too early. You should go sleep a bit more." "I can't sleep anymore. I might as well go exercise." "Who goes for a 3 o'clock run?" Madame Luo Shuqing coldly stabbed at him. She then sat on the sofa and patted the spot next to her. "I'm already this old. I can't sleep anymore. Come, accompany me for a chat. Come on. I wanted to ask you. Do you have any fixed social circles at school? Your friend from that day was called Shuele, right? He looks like a kind and honest person. Luo Nen knew that he could no longer escape. He could only sigh to himself and obediently return to endure a new round of torture. A full 2 hours passed, and Luo Nen chatted with his aunt from 3 to 5. Finally, Luo Nen obtained permission to go for a morning jog. It was as if he had been granted amnesty. He used the fastest speed to change into his clothes and shoes, and he left the house without looking back. It wasn't that he wasn't filial. It was just that as time passed, there was a risk that Emoya would be exposed for leaving home in the middle of the night. Usually, Emoya would wake up to practice her voice at this time. It was better to get away from this troublesome place. Luo Nen calculated the time until it was almost 8 o'clock. He reckoned that the first round of the battle between mother and daughter had already ended. Only then did he turn around and return home. He hadn't had much time to train in the outside world for 3 hours. His body was in a terrible state due to the withdrawal symptoms, and he couldn't withstand too much energy consumption. Luo Nen found a park to properly familiarize himself with the prison format, the heavily chained crow, the wraith sign, and various other elements. He wanted to see what sort of changes would occur to his body after the adaptation period. He didn't gain anything in the past 3 hours, but when he returned home, he was greeted with his aunt's anger as expected. Luo Nan, look at what you've done. As an accomplice, it was impossible to hide this sort of thing. The AI system would faithfully provide all of the surveillance footage for his aunt to choose and appraise. Luo Nen knew that he didn't need to explain anything at this time. He just needed to lower his head and take the scolding. In any case, it would be mealtime soon. Dinner's ready. Cool down. First fill your stomach. Over at the dining room, his uncle, Mo Haiheng, sat down first. He scooped a bowl of porridge and side dishes for himself. He drank it unhurriedly, tasted a few mouthfuls, and nodded. Today's millet is quite sticky. Next time, I'll buy this one, Mo Haiheng. His aunt's firepower shifted in an instant. However, his uncle remained calm and collected. Since you know where she is and where she's going, how could you lose her? Just endure it for now. You can scold her when you get back. If it were anyone else, such an exaggerated statement might just be the fuse for a family war. However, his uncle was one of the few people who had the qualifications to say such things. As a senior technical member of the SCA, Mo Haiheng had already worked in this authority department known as the Social Credit Administration for nearly 20 years. In this modern society where credit had completely replaced the function of currency, the SCA was the witness and administrator of all credit. It was also responsible for auditing the corresponding granting of authority. It could be said to be the hottest authority department. It wasn't that he was henpecked or anything like that. It was just that his aunt's culinary skills had been the same for decades. He really didn't dare to compliment her. As for her 2 children, Emoya had perfectly inherited her aunt's powerful talent and unparalleled culinary skills. Although she dared to cook, no one dared to eat it. There was also Emo Peng, Luo Nan's older cousin of the same age. It wasn't even 10 o'clock on a weekend morning. How was it possible for him to get up? The family ate breakfast together, and they didn't even bother to call him. It was probably because of Emoya's extremely serious behavior of running away from home that the atmosphere at the dining table had been low for a long time. Uncle had seen this kind of situation many times, so he calmly ate his porridge and watched the news. Luo Nan wasn't in a good mood to talk, so he just kept his head down and ate. His appetite was there. Plain porridge and side dishes were certainly not enough to satisfy him. Uncle had considered this point when he cooked. Beef was paired with nutritional supplements, and he was guaranteed to eat until he was full. It was reasonable to say that this was a very normal breakfast for the Mo family, even though it had been a month since the incident. But Luonin felt a bit strange today. It was because his mental senses were spread out at all times. Even if he lowered his head, he could still see his aunt and uncle exchanging glances. It seemed to be a bit too frequent. Was it like this in the past? Or was his mental state too sensitive today? Seeing that he was more or less done eating, his aunt suddenly opened her mouth. You, Luo Nan. Eh? Nothing going on today, right? Nothing. Then let's go to On High together. Let's go see your grandfather. Luo Nan was clearly stunned. Then he responded with a resounding voice, okay. But he was a bit worried in the blink of an eye. Grandpa's condition isn't good again? No, don't make blind guesses. Aunt tapped her chin. You clean up today. Luo Nen had no objections. On High Medical Center was a very famous sanatorium for mental illnesses in Xia City. It was located in the outskirts of Xia City, nearly 200 kilometers away from the main city district. It was approximately an hour's drive. Every time the family went on an outing, the front passenger seat was a golden treasure trove. No one wanted to receive his aunt's advice in the rear compartment. This time Luo Nan seized the seat before the sleepy Mo Peng could. He let out a sigh of relief when he got in the car. An hour's drive could be said to be long, but it could be said to be short. From Mo Peng's perspective, it was clearly very long. But Luo Nan had a lot of things to do to pass the time. He opened his portable notebook and looked at the interface of the flexible e-ink screen. Right now, the newly appeared visualization icon was still in the download state. Over 30 hours had passed and the progress had only reached 2%. Well, it was all thanks to this too. Otherwise, he would have thought that it was stuck. Luo Nan was unable to estimate just how much information he had dug out from the body of the human-faced arachnid. Or perhaps the external neuron's analysis speed was limited after it left the laboratory's abundant energy. Luo Nan looked at the battery capacity of the flexible e-ink screen. There was still around half of it left. This was already an extraordinary consumption, but it was nothing compared to the independent power station of Gear's laboratory. He could give it a try when he got to school tomorrow. Luo Nen opened the drawing software and directly entered the second layer interface. A 5-layer structure of students, staff, technicians, clergymen, and politicians appeared. But then he frowned. Was it a misconception? Did he feel that the interface had become dirty? It was inexplicably a bit dark, and it was even a bit trembling. Before he could take a closer look, his uncle in the driver's seat turned his head. You're researching the societal format diagram? Oh, you switched to a flexible screen. This driver of his was quite idle under the autopilot mode, and his gaze was quite sharp. Luo Nan grunted, wanting to vaguely brush it off. But Luo Nan's uncle curled his lips. In '79, I was forced by a certain someone to start a research project on the Bureau's supercomputer. I built a format diagram model for him, using 30 years of Xia City's authority and credit data. In the end, I was punished, and I was reprimanded by your grandfather for trying to fish from a tree. These are all things that happened before my eyes. Luo Nan knew that the certain someone was referring to his father, Luo Zhongheng. It seemed that Luo Nan's uncle and his father had a pretty good relationship. These past few years, Luo Nan had always been trying to correct Luo Nan's impression of his father. But it was useless to say these things. Luo Nan would never forgive a coward who used his grandfather's blood, sweat, and tears to exchange for freedom, then disappeared without a trace. He grunted in response, not wanting to say anything. In the back, Mo Peng saw his old man open his mouth and discovered a good opportunity to break free from his mother's low-pressure domain. He slid his seat forward and forcefully inserted himself. Chapter 87. Mo Peng's short and fat body moved forward like a fat groundhog. Luo Shuqing, who was behind him, couldn't bear to look at him and coldly stared at him. If you are ignorant and incompetent, then don't speak without thinking. How am I ignorant and incompetent? Are you saying that my A's in all 7 subjects are just there for you to trample on? Mo Peng had a wronged expression on his face. He clearly wanted to liven up the atmosphere. How did he get such a reputation? It was his father who knew him well. He knew that he couldn't stand the pressure of his menopausal mother, and was just here to join in the fun. He casually explained and brought him into the circle of discussion. Student and staff are just code names. They have their own specific meanings. Are you not interested in them? As long as he could hide from this old lady, he would be interested in anything. Mo Peng was thick-skinned. He chuckled and said, "Isn't there one now? Back then, you chased after me and wanted to instill this thing in me. Now that the seed has sprouted." He snatched the notebook from Luo Nan's hands as he spoke. He saw the flexible e-ink screen interface and was stunned. What effect is this? It looks like I'm soaking in water. Mo Peng's description was extremely apartment. Right now, the second layer of the drawing software's interface seemed to be submerged in muddy river water. The 5-story tower structure that was close to the diagram of Maslow's hierarchy of needs was practically completely submerged in the water. It looked as if there was a layer of dusky membrane separating it from the rest of the cards. The sketches that Luo Nan had created were even more blurry and indistinct. Luo Nan didn't know what was going on, but he had a faint feeling that this sort of scene was related to his own ability. He didn't want to discuss it further, so he took the notebook back and closed it. It's nothing, it's just a screensaver. The effect of this lie was very touching. However, Mo Peng was very clear about Luo Nan's awkward temperament. He knew that Luo Nan didn't want to talk about it, so he didn't ask. He still used the social format diagram as a life-saving straw. Brother Master, imparting knowledge and dispelling doubts refers to you. Tell me, what do those code names mean? Grass is growing in my heart. Luo Nan glanced at his uncle. Luo Nan was currently adjusting the car's AI function. It seemed that he no longer participated in the conversation between youngsters. On the other hand, his aunt, who was sitting in the back seat, was looking at them quietly with a dazed expression. The atmosphere in the carriage was a little subtle. Luo Nan thought for a bit and spoke in a soft voice. The original intent of establishing this model was to explain the effects of an individual on the social format and the structure of relationships. Social format? Mo Peng was stunned. Fortunately, he was the grandson of the Luo family. Even if he was not interested in formatting theory, he still had some basic concepts. It refers to the structure of society, right? The collective composition and way of existence of human beings that affects individuals and changes nature? Luo Nan gave Mo Peng a thumbs up when he heard this. Though it wasn't that precise, it saved Luo Nan a lot of talking. Every country, tribe, region, and human collective must have their own specific social structure. Through this format, a steady stream of new social individuals would be produced. At the same time, nature would be transformed and new resources would be obtained to provide for the existence and operation of the society. Every social individual will be branded with the social format, and to a certain extent, will produce a counterforce to the social format. Students refer to learners. They can only accept the one-way indoctrination of the social format. They are not considered complete social individuals and are unable to be of any use. Employees refer to workers. They are the basic social individuals. They possess a certain ability to survive independently and maintain the basic operation of the social format. Technicians refer to promoters. Their advantage over employees lies in the fact that they can already optimize the social format and increase the efficiency of the operation of the format. Clergymen refer to the enlightened. They have a relatively complete understanding of the social format and begin to consciously utilize the power of the social format. Politicians refer to the innovators. They are the higher-level enlightened. While utilizing the social format, they also carry out a conscious transformation of the format in an attempt to maximize the benefits. Mo Peng was worthy of being an excellent student with all 7 grades. He immediately spoke when he heard this. It sounds like a certain variant of the theory of hierarchy. Then the question is, what is the basis for dividing these classes and strata? Is there a unified standard? Luo Nan was silent when he heard this. He felt the gaze of his uncle from the side at this time. He raised his head and their gazes met. He revealed a bitter smile. The standard is me. I am the standard. Luo Yuandao picked up a rectangular block of wood in the independent ward of Anhai Sanatorium Center. He gently placed it on the wall that was half the height of a person in front of him. His fingers were trembling. The various diseases of his nervous system had pretty much destroyed his body. His originally tall stature had already collapsed. His entire body was just skin and bones. He was completely emaciated and deformed. He appeared to be incomparably weak. Luo Yuandao wasn't even 80 years old this year. In this day and age, he could be considered to have just entered old age. Some people hadn't even retired yet. However, he was already infinitely close to the end of his life. Even though he was still stubbornly standing, he was still constructing his work. Even though his fingers and arms were trembling, when the building blocks fell to their positions, they were all upright and seamless. He was able to obtain this result because he had been controlling it back and forth for nearly half an hour. He was determined not to let go until he obtained the final, perfect result. A smile appeared on his withered and dry face. It was clear that Luo Yuandao was extremely satisfied with the structure in front of him. In fact, it wasn't just in front of him. All around him were short walls made from building blocks. Luo Nan and Mo Peng could only talk to him through the short walls. The high-level nurse next to Luo Yuandao was a very patient middle-aged woman surnamed Hong. She saw that the building blocks had been placed, so she asked him softly from the other side, "Old man, this piece is done. Let's take a break?" Luo Yuandao ignored her. He was in a good mood, so he wasn't stingy in answering his grandson's questions. He grinned like a gigantic laughing skeleton. "I created the theory. Of course it uses me as the standard. It must serve me. Haven't you heard, all things are for me? My heart is the universe. I am the common lord of all things. I am the center of the universe." Mo Peng turned his head away a bit awkwardly. It was really hard for a normal person to endure this stubborn and crazy old man's logic. Right now it was very difficult for him to endure it. His parents, who were always by his side in the past, seemed to have gone to consult about the old man's condition. They weren't here, so he didn't even dare to speak. He felt more and more uncomfortable. However, what made Mo Peng feel even more uncomfortable was that his cousin, who was standing next to him, seemed to be very engrossed. He was even a bit fanatical. "Oh my God." Luo Yuandao picked up another building block and raised it in front of his eyes. He continued his lecture. "I possess the principles of heaven and earth. I can bestow the roots of all things. Just like this block of wood. It can be square, but it can also be round. Square and round are nothing more than external appearances. I can even change its internal root nature. What's so special about its external appearance? I used it to construct this temple. This is my domain. If I want it to be square, then it will be square. If I want it to be round, then it will be round." The building block fell as he spoke. But this time, he was too excited from speaking. He didn't place it in the right place, so it fell all of a sudden. Luo Yuandao reached out his hand to grab it by reflex. His weak body couldn't maintain its balance and he fell straight forward. Chapter 88. Nurse Hong rushed over and helped Luo Nan straighten up the old man. She said over and over, "It's okay. It's okay. There's cushioning equipment to prevent falling." It was unknown whether these words were meant to comfort others or to comfort herself. Luo Nan carefully supported his grandfather's shoulder, not daring to touch his arm. He felt that the old man's arm was as thin as a hemp stick. He could break it with just a bit of force. But Luo Nan felt his chest sink a bit at this time. Luo Yuandao's hemp stick-like arm was pressing against his chest, pushing him away. Luo Nan remembered that his grandfather didn't like other people to have physical contact with him. He didn't dare to resist. He saw that Nurse Hong was already in place, so he took advantage of the situation and retreated, pulling apart the distance. Luo Yuandao laughed at this time. His vocal cords rubbed out a hoarse laugh, revealing a strange feeling of joy. "You may have destroyed my shrine, but you can't stay in my country for long." On the other side, Mo Peng, who was a bit slow in reacting, didn't make it in time to rescue the old man. He finally couldn't help but touch his forehead with his palm to alleviate the awkwardness. Luo Nen didn't care about his grandfather's strange train of thought. He saw that the loose-leaf notebook that had been clamped under his elbow had fallen onto the messy rubble of building blocks. He bent over to pick it up. His fingertips had just touched the cover when he heard a low roar. "My spoils of war!" Luo Nan was stunned for a moment. A shadow swept over him. If he hadn't instinctively leaned back and Mo Peng pulled him, he would have been swept by Luo Yuandao's toes. Nurse Hong controlled the old man's balance in a flurry. Her mouth was constantly comforting him. "Old man, the spoils of war are still here. They're still here." She hurriedly gave Luo Nan and Mo Peng a meaningful glance. The two could only retreat and pull apart the distance when they saw this. "Bring it over. Give it to me." Luo Yuandao clearly looked a lot crazier than before, but his spirit was strangely vigorous. He was giving orders to people. Nurse Hong was adjusting the balance device. She couldn't free her hands for a time, so she indicated for Luo Nan to come forward. "It's fine. Old man, 1 yard at a time." In other words, he had already reached the stage of lacking logic. Luo Nan took a deep breath and suppressed the sourness in his heart. He walked forward to pick up the notebook. Luo Yuandao reached out to take it. The weight of the thick notebook was a bit too heavy for him. He trembled when he received it with one hand. Special Nurse Hong wanted to help but was rudely rejected. Although his arms were trembling and it looked like he would fall at any moment, he still flipped open the book and scanned through its contents. He knew that Luo Yuandao's current mental state was at a completely incomprehensible level. But at this time, Luo Nan's heart had the apprehension of handing in homework. He stared at the old man, wanting to see what the result would be. Bullshit. Bullshit. Luo Yuandao had a face of disdain when faced with the messy lines that Luo Nan had hastily drawn. In a sense, this was the most normal reaction. Luo Nan couldn't say what he was feeling in his heart. But in the next second, Luo Yuandao's movements froze. His gaze stopped on the paper, and his eyes seemed to focus. At this moment, he flipped to the page where the prison sketch had been messed up. For a full 5 seconds, Luo Yuandao did not move at all. Luo Nan's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He stared at his grandfather's face, which had already lost its form. Traces of weak flames of hope suddenly ignited within him. He leaned forward a bit, trying to see his grandfather's reaction a bit more clearly. Luo Yuandao cast a sidelong glance when he felt Luo Nan's movements. He suddenly said, "You've grown up." Luo Nan's heart thumped. He couldn't help but think, can he see it? He can understand. Luo Nan couldn't help but move forward again, but a withered arm pressed against his chest once more. Then, Luo Nan saw a pair of crazed and ice-cold eyes. "You've come to kill me." "Grandfather." Luo Nan's heart suddenly clenched, but he was pushed away by Luo Yuandao with great force. Luo Nan staggered and nearly fell down on the messy building blocks under his feet. Luo Yuandao was even more furious when he saw Luo Nan trampling on the building blocks. "My shrine. You're plundering my divine kingdom. My students, my employees, my technicians, my priests, my politicians. They're all mine." Luo Nan had just been supported by Mo Peng. He was stupefied on the spot when he heard this. But then he saw Luo Yuandao, who couldn't even stand stably, begin to move crazily. Luo Yuandao raised his leg and dropped it, completely kicking down the remaining 3 relatively intact building blocks. Nurse Hong saw that the situation was far from good. She had already injected a tranquilizer, but she couldn't control it for a while. "Grandfather! Grandfather!" Luo Nan and Mo Peng were both frightened and terrified. They didn't know how to react at all. Nurse Hong had already called for a doctor, but it was impossible for a doctor to appear instantly. Luo Yuandao kicked over all of his creations. Then he raised his head to the sky and howled with laughter, "Fire! Fire! Let the flames burn! Burn through the darkness of this cloak. A new god will step on the bones of an old god to ascend the throne. Come! Come! Let's see who's the master of the universe." Luo Nan's malevolent and terrifying figure was like a giant hammer. It rumbled and smashed against Luo Nan and Mo Peng's hearts. In the end, the two of them were only 15 or 16-year-old youths. They wanted to help, but they were afraid of causing trouble when faced with this sort of scene. They were at a loss for a time. Finally, the doctor rushed over. Behind him were actually Mo Haihang and Luo Shuqing. And at this time, the two of them didn't know what to say. They just moved out of the ward like puppets, standing stupidly and waiting. At this time, it could be said that every second felt like a year. Actually, it didn't take long. 10 minutes at most. Luo Shuqing walked out of the ward. She faced the two people who were still in a stupefied state and laughed. "It's nothing. Old people are often like this. They just talk a bit more." Luo Shuqing's relaxed attitude made Luo Nan and Mo Peng feel much better. They wanted to ask about the situation in detail, but they didn't know where to start. Luo Shuqing looked at her watch. "It's getting late. It's also time for your grandfather to rest. Let's go eat first. The food here is pretty good." "Alright. Your grandfather should be taking a walk outside at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Do you guys want to accompany him?" "Okay." Luo Nan immediately agreed, but then he was a bit worried. "If I'm here, will he? Who do you think you are?" Luo Shuqing laughed again. Then she let out a breath and looked at Mo Peng. Actually, Mo Peng wasn't quite willing to throw his precious weekend time in the mental hospital, but Luo Nan had made it clear. He could only shut his mouth. At most, he would play a few more rounds of 10 days in the wilderness. If he could pull Luo Nan over to fight, he could crush him a few dozen times in a row. That would be even better. Luo Shuqing laughed. "Then it's decided. Alright. When I was consulting with the doctor just now, he recommended a deep sleep nutrition pod. It can ease the mood and reduce stress. Let's go try it out as a family. We can also finish our afternoon break on the way." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.